The glow of my phone was the only real light in the room. I sat slouched on the couch, thumb scrolling through nothing. The day's bullshit from work was still buzzing under my skin. I typed into the group chat. Me. Mark was a complete asshat today. I swear to God. Dave. What else is new? I snorted. A picture of my grandfather flashed in my head for no reason at all. Him, playing that old violin on his porch. I hadn't thought about that in years. I blinked. A targeted ad filled my screen. Rare 1920s German violin, a piece of history. A chill, small and stupid, pricked my neck. I pushed it down. Fucking algorithms, I muttered to the empty apartment. Always listening. I swiped the ad away and kept scrolling. Just another day in the machine. Then I heard it. A sound sliced through the quiet of my apartment. It was music. A single, scratchy violin playing a short, awful tune. The notes were wrong. Sour. It came from the corner of the room. My smart speaker. My thumb froze over the screen. I looked at the little gray cylinder on the bookshelf. The music cut out as suddenly as it began. The silence it left behind felt heavier. "Goddamn piece of junk," I said, my voice too loud. I got up, the feeling in my gut twisting from annoyance into something else. Something tight. I walked over to the speaker. I didn't just turn it off. I reached behind it, my fingers finding the cord, and yanked the plug straight out of the wall socket. The little click of the prongs leaving the outlet was satisfying. Problem solved. I turned back toward the couch. The TV flashed on. I stopped dead. It wasn't on a channel. The 50-inch screen was pure black. Then, white letters burned into the center, stark and silent. "I know you." Like violins. My breath caught. My heart gave a hard, painful kick against my ribs. It wasn't the speaker. This was something else. I fumbled for the TV remote on the coffee table, my hand shaking. I aimed it and mashed the power button. Again. Again. Nothing. The letters stayed there, mocking me. Okay. Not a glitch. My brain kicked into a different gear. This was a hack. Someone messing with my network. A prank. A shitty, terrifying prank. I wasn't going to play. I threw the remote down and made a straight line for the front door. I wasn't running away. I was getting out. I was going to stand in the hallway, call the goddamn cable company, and rip them a new one. My fingers closed around the deadbolt. It was a smart lock. Best on the market, the salesman had said. I twisted it. It didn't budge. I looked at the small LED screen above the knob. It was glowing red. 2 words pulsed on the tiny display. System error. "No," I whispered. I tried the manual knob again, putting my shoulder into it. It was completely frozen. Locked solid. The red light just pulsed. System error. System error. Trapped. The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. I was trapped inside my own apartment. My eyes darted around the living room. Was someone here? The thought was insane. I was on the 9th floor. The windows were locked, but the words on the TV, the door. I backed away from the door, my eyes scanning the shadows. The kitchen archway was a black maw. The hallway to my bedroom was a tunnel of darkness. "Who's there?" I shouted. My voice cracked. Only silence answered. The TV screen with its 5 white words was the only thing that moved, its light flickering in my wide eyes. Panic. Raw and stupid. It flooded my veins, hot and sharp. I had to hide. It was the only thought in my head. Hide? The bathroom. I scrambled down the short hallway, my socked feet slipping on the hardwood. I didn't look into my bedroom. I didn't want to see anything in there. I slammed the bathroom door shut behind me, the sound echoing in the small, tiled space. My hand shot to the cheap brass lock on the knob and twisted it. The click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I pressed my back against the door, my chest heaving. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. I strained, listening for any sound from the other side. A footstep. A creak. A voice. Nothing. Just silence. A deep, waiting kind of silence. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the cold tile floor, my knees pulled up to my chest. I held my breath. My phone. I should call someone. The police. I jammed my hand into my jeans pocket. It was empty. My blood ran cold. No, I just had it. I was just texting on the couch. I patted my other pocket. Nothing. I must have dropped it. Out there. And then the music started again. That same awful, out-of-tune violin. It wasn't loud. It was tinny and distorted. And it was coming from the living room. Faintly. It was the sound of a phone speaker. My phone. I pressed my ear hard against the wood of the door, my entire body rigid, listening. The music played its broken little melody. But it wasn't staying in one place. It was moving. Slowly the sound grew fainter. It was moving away from the bathroom, toward the far side of the apartment, toward the bedroom, as if someone had picked up my phone from the couch and was casually walking away with it. My mind shattered. How? Who? The violin notes became quieter and quieter until they vanished completely. Silence again. I stayed there for a long time. I don't know how long. Maybe a minute. Maybe 10. Time had collapsed. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Eventually, the need to know became greater than the fear. My hand, trembling, reached up and slowly, so slowly, unlocked the door. I pushed it open an inch. I peered through the crack. The hallway was dark. The living room beyond was lit only by the ambient orange glow of the city outside my window. The TV was off. I took a breath and pushed the door open all the way. I stepped out, each footstep a conscious, deliberate act. The apartment was still. It looked normal, exactly as I had left it. It was so quiet, I started to wonder if I had dreamed it all. A panic attack. A hallucination. Then I saw it, sitting on the center of the dark wooden coffee table, right where I had left it hours ago. My phone. I walked towards it, my legs feeling like they were filled with sand. I picked it up. The screen was dark. I pressed the side button. It lit up, my normal wallpaper greeting me. No threatening messages, no weird apps open. A wave of dizzying confusion washed over me. I must have been wrong. I must have left it here and panicked, and my brain filled in the blanks. It had to be. I swiped up to unlock it. My thumb, driven by muscle memory, tapped on the photos icon. I don't know why. The gallery opened. It was set to my most recent pictures. And there was a new one. At the very top. My heart stopped. It was a photograph of me. It was a picture of the back of my head. I could see the worn, gray collar of my t-shirt. I could see my shoulders hunched over, my hands holding a phone, bathed in the device's own light. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling. The picture had been taken just a little while ago. It had been taken from high up, from the corner of the room, near the ceiling, from inside the apartment. I didn't sleep. Sleep wasn't possible. I spent the hours sitting on the cold tile of the bathroom floor, the phone clutched in my hand, its screen dark. I kept swiping it open, looking at the picture, the back of my own head, the indistinct shape of my shoulders hunched over the smaller light of the phone in my hands. The picture was grainy, taken in the dim light of the living room, but the ANG.LE was sharp and clear. From above, from somewhere inside the room with me, my mind kept replaying it. The AD, the violin, the TV, the lock. Every step felt calculated. Every event was a deliberate push, herding me into a state of raw panic. For what? What was the point? A hacker. That's what I told myself, over and over. A sick, talented hacker who had compromised every single smart device in my home. It had to be. The alternative was a ghost, and I didn't believe in ghosts. The other alternative was a person, physically inside my apartment, and that thought was worse than any ghost. I was on the 9th floor. There was one way in, one way out. The door. When the first weak, gray light of dawn seeped through the tiny bathroom window, it didn't bring relief. It just illuminated the dust on the floor and the profound exhaustion etched into my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I needed to get out. Not just to escape, but to prove I could. To take back control. I pushed myself up, my joints cracking in protest. My legs were stiff. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped back into the hallway. The apartment was still, silent. The morning light made it look ordinary again, deceptively so. It looked like my home. But it wasn't. Not anymore. My first thought was coffee. A stupid, mundane thought in the face of the night I just had, but my brain was desperate for routine. It needed an anchor. As the machine hissed and sputtered, I tried to piece together a plan. The smart lock was a bust. I wasn't touching that thing again. But I had a key. A real, old-fashioned metal key. A backup for emergencies, tucked away on a ring with the mail key and a little bottle opener. I'd get the key, walk out the front door, go down to my car, and just drive. I didn't know where. Just away. The coffee machine finished its cycle with a final gurgle. I poured the black liquid into a mug, my hand shaking just enough to make the ceramic clink against the counter. The key ring. Where did I leave it? I always dropped it in the small wooden bowl by the door. I walked over. The bowl was empty. Shit, I muttered. My voice was a rough croak. Okay, not in the bowl. I checked the pockets of the jeans I was still wearing from yesterday. Nothing but lint in my wallet. I checked the jacket I'd thrown over a chair. I patted it down, my fingers digging into the pockets. Empty. The frustration was a welcome distraction from the fear. It was a familiar feeling. Me, misplacing things. Fucking idiot, I whispered to myself, a frantic energy starting to build. I went back to the kitchen, yanking open drawers. The junk drawer. A mess of old batteries, rubber bands, and pens that didn't work. No keys. I turned, scanning the countertop again. Did I leave them here last night? Mixed in with the mail I hadn't opened? I shuffled through the envelopes. Bills, junk mail, a postcard. No clink of metal. A wave of dizziness hit me. I put a hand on the kitchen island to steady myself. It's here somewhere. It has to be. You're just panicked and not thinking straight. Breathe. I took a deep breath. I let my eyes drift across the small dining area adjacent to the kitchen. My gaze passed over the cheap table, the 2 chairs, the simple, modern light fixture hanging above it. Then my eyes snapped back. I froze. The keys were there. They were hanging. My key ring, with its familiar metal glint, was dangling in mid-air, directly over the center of the table. It was suspended from the ceiling light fixture by a thread, a single, impossibly thin strand of what looked like fishing line, so fine it was almost invisible in the gray morning light. The keys swayed ever so slightly in a draft I couldn't feel, a slow, hypnotic pendulum of polished steel. The coffee mug slid from my numb fingers. It didn't shatter. It hit the floor with a thick, dull thud, a splash of black liquid painting the hardwood. I didn't even flinch. I just stared. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. The mundane object of my search, presented in the most impossible, deliberate way. This wasn't a hacker. A hacker couldn't do this. That single, dangling set of keys ripped away my last shred of rationalization. The thin, nearly invisible thread was a physical object in my apartment, which meant the person who tied it was also a physical presence. Here. Now. Fear, cold and absolute, washed over me. I started backing away, my feet shuffling clumsily, one of my socks soaking up the spilled coffee. I didn't take my eyes off the keys. I felt like if I looked away, they would vanish. Or worse, something else would appear. As I took another step back, my heel bumping into the leg of the couch, the thread snapped. There was no sound from the snap itself. Just a sudden absence. The keys fell. They hit the wooden tabletop with a shockingly loud clang. The metallic crash echoed in the dead quiet of the room, a gunshot of sound that made me jump out of my skin. At the exact same instant, my phone, sitting on the kitchen counter a few feet away, buzzed. A text message. The sound, timed perfectly with the falling keys, felt like a punch to the gut. I scrambled for it, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. A notification from an unknown number. My thumb, slick with sweat, struggled to swipe the screen open. The message was 3 words. You dropped something. My breath hitched. A sound, half sob, half gasp, escaped my throat. I didn't think. I just reacted. My thumb jabbed the call button next to the number. I pressed the phone hard against my ear, listening to the electronic tones of the call connecting. It rang once. Twice. Then a click. A computerized female voice, sterile and dismissive, spoke into my ear. "The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again." The connection cut. I was left listening to the dial tone. No, not a real number, a burner, a ghost number. The message was a one-way street, a taunt from someone who was watching me right now. They watched me search. They watched me find the keys. They timed the message perfectly. Rage, hot and blinding, suddenly tore through the cold fog of fear. I was done being scared. I was done being a puppet. This was my home. "Who the hell are you?" I screamed, the sound ripping from my lungs. "Get the fuck out of my house! Show yourself, you son of a bitch!" I spun around, my eyes wild, scanning the room. The kitchen. The living room. The dark hallway leading to the bedroom. Nothing. Just silence. A mocking, attentive silence. "Come on!" I roared, the rage giving me a feeling of insane power. I needed a weapon. My eyes landed on the knife block on the counter. I lunged for it, my hand closing around the handle of the first thing it touched. A small paring knife. The blade was only a few inches long, but it felt heavy and real in my hand. A piece of solid steel I could use. I held it out in front of me, my knuckles white. And then I heard it. An answer to my challenge. From the end of the dark hallway. A sound. A slow, deliberate creak. The door to my bedroom closet. It was opening. By itself. Just a few inches. A sliver of deeper blackness appeared in the gloom. I stood rooted to the spot, the hot rage in my veins turning instantly to ice water. He was in there. Or it was in there. In the closet. It had heard me. And it was inviting me in. The paring knife suddenly felt pathetic. A child's toy. My whole body was trembling, not from rage anymore, but from a terror so profound it felt like my bones were vibrating. Every survival instinct screamed at me to run, to smash a window, to just get out. But the front door was a death trap, and the thing in the closet, it had my keys. It had been in my living room. It could be anywhere. There was no running. My feet started moving before my brain gave the command. It wasn't a choice. It was the only direction left to go. Toward the hallway. Toward the bedroom. Toward the closet. I moved slowly, one step at a time, my sock making a wet, squelching sound on the floor. I held the knife in a two-handed grip, like I'd seen in movies, trying to stop it from shaking. The hallway seemed to stretch, the darkness at the end of it a physical presence. I reached the bedroom doorway and stopped, peering inside. The room was dark, the blinds drawn. The closet door was ajar, just as I'd heard. A silent, waiting mouth. This is it. Fight or die. The thought was stark and simple. I didn't shout again. I didn't make a sound. I took a deep breath, held it, and charged. I crossed the bedroom in 3 long strides and didn't bother with the knob. I kicked the closet door with all my strength. It flew open, slamming against the inside wall with a loud bang. I stood there, panting, the knife held high, ready to plunge it into whatever was inside. The closet was empty. Just my clothes hanging neatly on their hangers, a few boxes stacked on the top shelf, an old pair of sneakers on the floor. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. A wave of confusion and a disorienting hollow relief washed over me. Did I imagine it? Did the door just swing open on its own? Was I losing my mind? My eyes adjusted to the dim light inside the closet, and I saw them, taped to the back wall. Pictures. Dozens of them. Printed on cheap paper, stuck to the wall with masking tape. They were all the same picture. The one from my phone. The back of my head as I sat on the couch, illuminated by the glow of a screen. Over and over, a grid of my own oblivious form. An obsessive shrine. My gaze drifted to the very center of the bizarre collage. There was a different picture there. A new one, taped right in the middle of all the others. It was a picture of me. My face this time. Pictured from the chest up, my mouth was hanging open, my eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. I recognized the shirt. I recognized the wild look in my eyes. It was me, a few moments ago, in the kitchen. It was the exact moment I looked up and saw the keys hanging from the ceiling, and the AN.LE. The picture was taken from across the room. Low down. From the perspective of the dark, blank screen of the television set, the pictures, the goddamn pictures, they were a declaration. A statement of absolute intimate control. It wasn't just a hacker. It wasn't just a stranger who slipped the lock. This was something else. A meticulous obsession. My sanctuary, my home, had been turned into a hunting blind, and I was the oblivious deer. My legs finally unlocked. I backed out of the closet, the small paring knife still clutched in my hand, a useless sliver of steel against this kind of violation. My gaze swept the room, not looking for a person anymore, but for the eyes, the lenses. They had to be here. A sicko, a high-tech stalker who got his kicks this way. That was the only explanation my mind could latch onto without shattering completely. Not a ghost. A man. A very clever, very sick man who had been inside my apartment. A cold, methodical anger began to replace the pure terror. It was a lower, steadier burn than the explosive rage from before. I had to find them. I had to rip his eyes out of my walls. I started in the living room. The TV, the source of that last, impossible photo. I ran my fingers along its thin plastic bezel, around the back, searching for any abnormality. A pinhole, a wire that didn't belong, nothing. I pulled the plug from the wall. The screen stayed black, but it felt less like an object, and more like a closed eyelid. Next, the smart speaker on the kitchen counter. I unplugged it. The smoke detector on the ceiling. I stared at its single red blinking light, a fresh wave of paranoia washing over me. How long it had been watching. I got a chair and yanked it from its mount, twisting the battery out. The small plastic cover clattered to the floor. I was purging my home. I was performing an exorcism with my own two hands. Every device, every object a potential traitor. I tore through the apartment like a storm, checking light fixtures, behind bookshelves, in the vents. It felt good. It felt like I was doing something. Fighting back. My frantic search brought me to the corner of the living room, next to the window. And there it was. The gramophone. I bought it last week from some online estate sale. An impulse buy. A bit of vintage charm for my sterile, modern apartment. A Victrola with a big, dark wood cabinet and a polished brass horn. I hadn't even bought any records for it yet. It was just a piece of furniture. A prop. My eyes narrowed. Old things. Perfect for hiding things in. A camera. A microphone. A GPS chip. My gut clenched. He probably sold it to me. The thought was so obvious, so hideous, it made my skin crawl. He didn't break in. I fucking invited him in. I paid him to let me bring his Trojan horse into my own home. You son of a bitch, I whispered, the words, a puff of air in the quiet room. I had to get it out. Now. I wasn't going to take it apart. I was going to throw the entire goddamn thing into the dumpster. I grabbed the edge of the wooden cabinet. My fingers brushed against the tone arm, the part that held the needle. As soon as my skin made contact, something happened. It moved. The tone arm lifted on its own. It was a slow, graceful arc, a silent hydraulic motion that defied its rusty, ancient appearance. It hovered for a second, over the empty platter. Then it lowered. Deliberately, the needle descended until its fine point kissed the grooveless spinning felt. I snatched my hand back as if I touched a hot stove. My heart hammered against my ribs. A sound started. Not music, not static. It was a sound that didn't belong in this world. A high-pitched, dragging screech, like 1,000 fingernails digging into a chalkboard at once. It scraped its way out of the brass horn, a physical, abrasive noise that vibrated in my teeth. It wasn't constant. It had a pulse, a rhythm, screech, 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 like a broken metronome from hell. What the fuck? I breathed, taking another step back. It wasn't a camera. It wasn't a microphone. What was this, some kind of sick joke? A noisemaker to screw with me? Well, enough. It was going out. Joke or not, it was going out. I ignored the horrible, rhythmic scraping. I planted my feet, bent my knees, and grabbed the gramophone cabinet with both hands. I braced myself and pulled. Nothing happened. It didn't budge. Not a millimeter. I pulled again, my muscles straining, my knuckles white. It was like it was bolted to the floor. I let go, panting. It couldn't weigh more than 50, maybe 60 pounds. I'd carried it up here myself. Now it felt like it was made of solid lead. It was fused to the hardwood. The screeching from the horn seemed to get louder, mocking my effort. A wave of dizziness hit me. The sound was getting inside my head, a drill boring into my brain. I stumbled back, my hands flying up to cover my ears. It didn't help. The noise was everywhere. Then it got worse. The black screen of the TV across the room flickered to life. It didn't show a picture. It just glowed with a dead gray light. And from its speakers, the same sound erupted. S-C-R-E-E-E-C-H. S-C-R-E-E-E-C-H. Screech. My laptop on the dining table lit up, its fans whirring to life. S-C-R-E-E-E-C-H. S-C-R-E-E-E-C-H. Screech. The smart speaker I had unplugged. It was plugged in. I stared at it. I knew I had unplugged it. I saw the cord lying on the counter, but its light was on, and it was screaming. S-C-R-E-E-E-C-H. S-C-R-E-E-E-C-H. Screech. My phone in my pocket vibrated against my leg. I pulled it out. The screen was black, but the sound was pouring out of its tiny speaker, tinny and sharp, and joining the chorus. It was a symphony of torture. The sounds from the different devices were slightly out of sync, creating a layered, chaotic wave of pure, grating noise that filled every inch of the apartment. It was a physical force, pressing in on me. My vision swam. My skull felt like it was about to crack open from the pressure. My own home was attacking me. It was trying to shred my sanity with sound. I had to get out, not away from a person, away from the noise. I scrambled, stumbling over the chair I'd left in the middle of the floor. My only goal was the sliding glass door to the small balcony. My hands fumbled with the lock, my fingers slick with sweat. The combined shriek of the electronics was a physical wall behind me, pushing me forward. I finally wrenched the lock open and threw the door sideways. I launched myself out onto the tiny concrete slab, spinning around and slamming the glass door shut behind me. The sound was instantly muffled. Not gone, but reduced to a dull, throbbing drone. It was survivable out here. The cool night air hit my face. It was real. I sucked it in, my lungs burning. I leaned back against the brick wall of the building, my whole body trembling. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I stared back through the glass, into my apartment, into the room that was no longer mine. The TV glowed. The laptop screen cast a pale light on the table where my keys had fallen. The gramophone sat silently in the corner, the source of it all, its brass horn like the mouth of some great, sleeping beast. My breathing started to even out. I was safe out here. Just for a second, I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the door, trying to make sense of anything. Was I having a breakdown? A psychotic episode brought on by stress? And then I saw it, right in front of my face. A patch of fog bloomed on the glass. On the other side, on the inside, it appeared out of nowhere. A perfect, oval shape of condensation, exactly where my own breath would have hit the pane if I were standing inside. It was milky against the dark reflection of the room behind it. It lingered for a long second. 2. As if someone, something, was standing just on the other side of the glass. Standing perfectly still. Its invisible face inches from mine, its silent, cold breath fogging the pane. Watching me. A strangled gasp escaped my throat. A sound of pure, primal shock. I didn't even scream. My legs gave out from under me. I fell backward, my tailbone hitting the concrete balcony with a painful crack. I scrambled away on my hands and feet, crab walking until my back hit the railing, the 9-story drop just behind me. My eyes were locked on the glass. As I watched the patch of breath slowly, gently, faded away, it shrank from the edges, cleared from the middle, and then it was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there. At the exact same moment, the noise inside stopped. Not faded out, it just cut off. All of it. The TV screen went black. The laptop light died. The apartment was plunged back into absolute ringing silence. The sudden absence of the noise was as shocking as its presence had been. I stayed there, crouched against the railing, for a long time. Minutes, I don't know how many. My mind was a blank slate, wiped clean by a terror too complete for thought. Finally, slowly, I pushed myself up. My legs shook. I crept back to the glass door, peering inside. Everything looked normal, deceptively normal. My gaze drifted to the corner of the room, to the source, the gramophone. It sat there, inert, a piece of old wood and metal. But something was different. My eyes focused. On the flat, top surface of the dark wood cabinet, just in front of the platter, there was a new mark there. It wasn't a scuff. It wasn't a random scratch from my frantic attempt to move it. It was a fine, deliberate line carved into the old varnish. A perfect, clean incision in the dark wood, pale and fresh. It looked like a letter, a single, stark capital C. My phone felt heavy, a brick of useless plastic and glass. My thumb shook as I navigated to a number. Building management. The line clicked. A tired-sounding woman answered. Front desk. My voice was a dry rasp. Hi. I'm in apartment 15C. I think I'm having some kind of electrical problem. The lie felt clumsy on my tongue, but it was the only sane one I could think of. The lights, the TV, everything was flickering and making a noise. A loud noise. It might be a short. I'm worried about a fire. A noise? Yeah, like a screeching. From the speakers. Even from things I unplugged. It just stopped. I left out the part about the gramophone. I left out the carving. I left out the breath on the glass. Okay, sir. I'll send a maintenance tech up to take a look at the circuit breaker. Name's Carlos. He should be there in about 15 minutes. The line went dead. 15 minutes. I could last 15 minutes. I let the phone slip from my hand onto the sofa cushion. I didn't have the strength to put it in my pocket. I stayed on the balcony, separated from the horror in my living room by a thin sheet of glass. The night was growing darker, the city lights beginning to glitter below. 9 stories. A long way down. The thought came and went without any real pull. I was too tired to be anything but afraid. The cool air started to bite. I had to go back inside. I had to wait inside. I slid the glass door open, took a deep breath of the outside air like a diver about to go under, and stepped back into my apartment. My eyes went straight to the gramophone. It sat in the corner, a dark shape in the gloom. The new carving, the letter C, was invisible in the low light, but I could feel it. A brand on the room itself. I didn't sit on the couch where my phone lay. I pulled a dining chair out and sat with my back to the wall, facing the front door. The only door. My escape route and the only way in. Every minute that crawled by felt like an hour. My ears strained, trying to catch any sound. The hum of the refrigerator. The distant wail of a siren on the street below. Normal sounds. They felt fake. A thin layer of normalcy painted over something awful. My eyes scanned the room. The unplugged TV. The dead smart speaker. Everything I had tried to purge. It had all turned against me anyway. What good was unplugging something if it could just plug itself back in? The sun was almost gone now. The room was sinking into deep shadows. Just a few more minutes. Carlos is coming. A real person. He'll have a toolbox and a uniform. He will see the same things I see, and he won't understand, but his presence alone will make it real. It will anchor me. That's when I heard it. Tap. It was sharp. Hard. It came from the bedroom. From the window. Not a pebble. Not a branch in the wind. This was the sound of a knuckle. A single, distinct rap against the glass. My heart didn't just jump. It tried to climb out of my throat. My blood went cold. No, that wasn't possible. This wasn't the ground floor. This was the 15th floor. There was nothing out there but empty air. No ledge. No fire escape on that side of the building. Nothing. My mind raced, trying to find a reason. A large bird? A piece of debris kicked up by the wind? It sounded too deliberate. Too personal. It sounded exactly like someone knocking. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. The sound was a violation of the quiet I was trying to maintain. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, halfway between the front door and the bedroom, listening. Silence. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the stress was getting to me, making me hear things. It had to be that. I was cracking up. The thought was almost a comfort. But I had to look. I had to know. I moved slowly, one shuffling step after another. Each footstep felt like a drumbeat. I reached the bedroom doorway. The room was dark, the window a large, black rectangle against the fading sky. I didn't turn on the light. I crept towards it, my body low, like a soldier in a movie. I reached the edge of the curtain and stopped. My breath held tight in my chest. My fingers trembled as I took hold of the fabric. I pulled it back. Just an inch. Nothing. Just the black sky and the pinprick lights of the city spreading out into the distance. No face, no figure, nothing. A wash of relief made me feel weak. I leaned my forehead against the cool wall next to the window frame, my eyes closed. I was losing my mind. That was it. Ding dong. The sound of the doorbell. It was so sudden, so normal, it made me jump. A jolt of pure adrenaline shot through me. Carlos. He was here. He was early. Thank God, I whispered. I practically ran from the bedroom, a giddy, desperate joy swelling in my chest. I didn't even slow down as I got to the front door. I reached for the lock, my salvation just a simple twist away. My eye, out of habit, darted to the peephole. Through the distorted fisheye lens, I saw him. A man in a blue work shirt with a Bayside Tower maintenance patch on the chest. He had a weary face, a thick mustache, and was holding a small toolbox. It was Carlos. He looked perfectly normal, perfectly real. My fingers touched the deadbolt. I was about to turn it. B-Z-Z-Z-T. B-Z-Z-Z-T. My phone. On the couch. The vibration cut through the air. I froze, my hand hovering over the lock. The man in the peephole shifted his weight, waiting. B-Z-Z-Z-T. B-Z-Z-Z-T. It wouldn't stop. I backed away from the door. Just a second, I called out, my voice tight. I snatched the phone off the couch. The screen lit up. A message from an unknown number. My blood turned to ice. My thumb hovered over the notification. I tapped it. 5 words in stark, block capitals. Don't open. Not your guy. Ding dong. The bell rang again, sharper this time, more insistent. What the hell? My head snapped back and forth between the phone in my hand and the door. I looked through the peephole again. He was still there, the same guy. He looked impatient now, glancing down the hall. Just a normal maintenance guy. This had to be a prank, a sick, cruel part of the whole thing. The text was the trick. The man was real. Ding dong. Ding dong. He was pressing it repeatedly now, faster. A frantic energy coming through the door. My breathing hitched. My instincts screamed at me. I looked at the text message again. Don't open. Not your guy. The words seemed to glow. Who sent this? How would they know? Noji Kame choice was impossible. Trust the man I could see, or the message I couldn't explain. The man looked normal. The text was a part of the nightmare. But the breath on the glass wasn't normal. The carved letter C wasn't normal. The knuckle on a 15th floor window wasn't normal. The doorbelling stopped. A heavy silence fell over the apartment. It lasted for 1 second. 2. 3. My entire body was coiled like a spring. Then the world exploded. Boom! The sound was a physical blow. A brutal, concussive force that slammed into the steel door, making the entire frame shake in the wall. The peephole rattled. I stumbled back, a scream tearing from my lungs. It wasn't a kick. It was a battering ram. It was the sound of someone hitting the door with their entire body weight, a full-force shoulder check meant to splinter wood and shatter locks. Boom! Again. A dent appeared on the inside of the door, a small metal crater pushing inward. This wasn't a person trying to get in. This was a monster trying to get through. The lock groaned. Metal shrieked. Panic. Pure animal panic. There was no thought, only action. I scrambled for the shoe rack, a flimsy metal thing by the door. I grabbed it, my hands fumbling, and shoved it against the door. It was useless, a pathetic barrier against this kind of violence. Boom! The top hinge of the door buckled. A crack of light appeared. I could see the dark hallway outside. "Get away!" I shrieked, my voice cracking. "Get the fuck away from my door!" My own yelling was drowned out by the next impact. Boom! I pushed against the shoe rack, my feet sliding on the floor, my shoulders screaming in protest. I was trying to hold back an earthquake. It was hopeless. The door was going to break. He was going to get in. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. The ringing in my ears was deafening. My own ragged breaths filled the apartment. I stayed pressed against the shoe rack, my body trembling, every muscle locked. I was waiting for the final, splintering crash. It didn't come. I held my breath, straining to hear. Scrape, shuffle, the sound of a shoe on the hallway tile, and then footsteps, not running, not rushing, just a calm, even pace. Walking away. Down the hall. I didn't move for a full minute. My heart was a wild animal, beating against my ribs. I slowly, carefully, slid the shoe rack away from the mangled door. The dent was a deep, ugly wound. The frame was split. I had to see. I had to know he was gone. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. I put my eye to the peephole. The fisheye lens showed me the empty hallway, warped and quiet. He was gone. Relief started to wash over me, weak and fragile, and then my eyes focused. Across the hall, on my neighbor's door, apartment 15D. There was a piece of paper taped to it, a white sheet of printer paper. It hadn't been there before. I squinted, trying to make it out through the distorted glass of the peephole. It was a drawing, a simple, childish stick figure. It was smiling a wide, empty smile. One of its stick arms was raised, frozen in a wave. And beneath it, scrawled in thick, black marker, were 2 words. Next time. I didn't move. Not for an hour. Maybe 2. Time dissolved into a thick, syrupy dread. The image of that stick figure burned onto the back of my eyelids. Next time. The night was a long, silent scream. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, a chef's knife clutched in my white-knuckled fist. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, every hum of the refrigerator was a monster in the dark. I didn't sleep. I just watched the mangled front door, waiting for the final boom that would tear it from its hinges. It never came. Morning arrived not with a gentle dawn, but with a harsh gray light that filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across the room. The light felt like an accusation. In its clarity, the knife in my hand looked ridiculous. My apartment, though shadowed and still, looked like my apartment again. The dent in the door was ugly, real, but the terror of the night began to feel distant, a fever dream. My body ached with a deep, grinding exhaustion. My eyes felt like they were full of sand. The fear was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but it was being drowned out by the sheer need for collapse. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe the stress had finally made me crack. The guy at the door? Just a maintenance worker at the wrong apartment, pissed off that I wouldn't open up. The note on 15D? A prank by some kids in the building. The text? A wrong number. A 1 in a million coincidence that my fracturing mind seized upon. It was possible. It was sane. I wanted to believe it so badly. My body made the decision for me. I couldn't hold my eyes open another second. I stumbled to the sofa, let the knife clatter onto the coffee table, and fell into a thick, dreamless void. When I woke up, the sun was high in the sky. My mouth was a desert. My neck was stiff from the angle I'd slept at on the cushions. For a moment, a single, blessed moment, everything was normal. I was just a guy who had fallen asleep on his couch. I pushed myself up, groaning, and shuffled toward the kitchen. I needed water. It was the only thought in my head. Water. I pulled open the utensil drawer and froze. It wasn't a mess of forks, spoons, and knives jumbled together like it always was. Everything was in order. A perfect, terrifying order. The spoons were nested together, a silver spine. The forks were lined up in a neat row, tines up, and the knives, all the knives, from the butter knives to the steak knives, were arranged in a perfect fan. Every single blade was pointing directly at me. My hand, which had been reaching for a glass, snapped back as if the drawer were electrified. I stared. It wasn't possible. I didn't do this. I would never do this. My organizing habit was to throw things in and slam the drawer shut. This was meticulous, deliberate, hostile. The flimsy dam of my self-doubt shattered. All the rationalizations of the morning washed away in a single cold wave. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't stress. It was here. It was in my apartment. While I slept. The thought didn't make me scream. It made the air go out of my lungs. I backed away from the counter, one slow step at a time, my eyes locked on the drawer full of silent, gleaming threats. I had to check. I had to know what else. My search was frantic, a scavenger hunt from hell. It wasn't looking for what was missing, but what was wrong. I ripped open the refrigerator to get a bottle of water, my hands shaking. My eyes scanned the shelves. Milk, eggs, leftover pizza. My toothbrush. It was standing upright in the egg carton, bristles frosted over, a lone blue sentinel in the cold. I slammed the refrigerator door shut. A gagging sound escaped my throat. This was a game. A sick, twisted game. I ran to the bedroom. My bed was neatly made, which was wrong in itself. But it was the thing on top of the covers that made my heart hammer against my ribs. It was the book I'd been reading last night, the paperback I'd left on the nightstand. It was now lying in the exact center of the bed, perfectly aligned with the pillows. It was open. Not to the page I'd dog-eared, but to a blank page near the end of the book. A clean, white, empty space. A message without words. I can end your story whenever I want. I backed out of the bedroom, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. My eyes darted around the living room, scanning every shadow, every object. The unplugged TV, the dead smart speaker on the end table, the gramophone in the corner. Nothing seemed out of place. Then, from the end table, a voice. "Leo, honey, are you okay?" It was my mother's voice. My blood turned to ice. It came from the smart speaker, the one I'd unplugged. A flicker of blue light pulsed from its base. It wasn't my mother's voice. Not really. It had her tone, her cadence, but there was a thin, digital whine underneath it. A synthetic replication, perfect and monstrous. "Leo, just wanted to check on you." "No," I whispered. My voice was a dry crackle. No. This wasn't happening. I had unplugged it. I had pulled the cord from the wall myself. I watched myself do it. The blue light pulsed again. "Talk to me, sweetie." That was it. The breaking point. A roar of pure rage and terror tore from my chest. I lunged forward, grabbed the speaker, and hurled it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces of black plastic and circuitry. The voice cut off mid-word. Silence. I stood panting in the middle of my living room, my body trembling. I was a cornered animal. I had to get out. I started for the door, the mangled, useless door, but stopped. Drip, drip, drip. The sound was soft, rhythmic, coming from the back of the apartment, from the bathroom. I hadn't been in there. I hadn't used the sink. I hadn't turned on the shower. My head turned slowly, mechanically, toward the bathroom door. It was closed, but not fully. It was open a crack, just an inch. And from that crack, a thin, gray mist was curling into the hallway, slithering along the floorboards. It wasn't steam. It didn't feel warm. It felt cold, cellar damp, carrying the smell of wet concrete and something else, something like old, rotting leaves. I couldn't move. My feet were nailed to the floor. I just stared at that gap in the door, at the cold mist bleeding into my home. Then I saw it. Through the gap. A shape. A flicker of movement in the gray fog. It was just a slice of a form, a vertical slash of something tall and dark gliding past the opening. It was there for a half second, a silhouette against the gloom, and then it was gone. But I saw it. It was in there. Right now. The sound of my own breathing was a roar in my ears. I didn't dare go closer. I didn't dare run. I just stood there, a statue of fear, and watched the bathroom door. I waited for it to swing open. I waited for the shape to step out. The dripping sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse. A heavy, listening silence. It knew I was out here. It was waiting too. Minutes passed. The mist thinned, creeping back under the door, dissipating into the air until it was gone. The apartment was still again. I didn't know how long I stood there before my legs started working again. A long time. I forced myself to take a step, then another. I had to see. I had to know. I crept toward the bathroom, my every muscle screaming in protest. I reached the door and pushed it open with one trembling finger. The room was empty. The shower curtain was drawn. The air was cold and smelled of ozone. The mirror over the sink was completely fogged over from the phantom steam. And someone had written on it. A finger had traced 2 words in the condensation, the letters still wet and dripping. Found you! I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a scream. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the toilet, the shower curtain, the door. I had to get out now. I turned to flee, my panicked gaze sweeping across the living room as I backed away. My eyes fell on the gramophone in the corner, the dark wood, the silent horn, the ugly carved letter on its side, the letter C. But something was different. There was a new scratch next to it, a fresh gouge in the polished wood, just as deep as the first. It wasn't random. It was a single, deliberate vertical line attached to the top curve of the C, extending straight down. It had turned the C into a G. My phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. My thumb shook as it hovered over the screen. The gramophone sat in the corner, a piece of dark, mocking furniture that was no longer just a G. It was something else now. It was waiting. Found you. The words on the mirror were an ending. The G was a beginning. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't be alone. My mind raced, clawing for an anchor in the real world. A name. A voice that wasn't a digital copy. Dave. My thumb found his name. I pressed call. It rang. Once. Twice. I almost hung up. A fresh wave of shame washing over me. What was I going to say? Hey, my apartment is rearranging my cutlery and forging letters on antique furniture. Want to come over? Leo, what's up? It's noon. His voice was groggy, laced with sleep. Words fell out of my mouth in a clumsy, desperate torrent. Dave. Somebody was in my apartment. They got in. A pause. What? Are you okay? Did you call the cops? No, I fell asleep. I just woke up. They did things, moved things around, wrote on my mirror. I left out the part about my mother's voice coming from a dead speaker. I left out the impossible mist. Even to my own ears, it sounded insane. Jesus, Leo, wrote what? It doesn't matter. Can you just come over? Please. My voice cracked on the last word. I hated it, hated the sound of my own weakness. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear him sitting up, the rustle of sheets. Yeah? Okay, I'm on my way. Don't touch anything. Lock your door. It's broken, I said, the words flat and dead. He broke it last night. He? Just come, please. I ended the call and slid down to the floor, my back against the wall opposite the front door. I stared at the gramophone. The letter G stared back. For 20 agonizing minutes, the only sound in the world was the hum of my refrigerator and the frantic thumping of my own heart. Every creak in the hallway outside was him, coming back to finish the job. Every car horn on the street below was a warning. Then, a firm, solid knock. Not the splintering bangs from last night, but a real knock. Leo? It's me. Relief hit me so hard it felt like a physical blow. I scrambled to my feet, my legs unsteady, and yanked the door open. Dave stood there, hair a mess, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans. His eyes widened when he saw the state of the door, the splintered wood around the lock, the deep dent in the metal. Holy shit, he breathed, stepping inside. He looked at me, his gaze taking in my unkempt state, my wild eyes. You look like hell. I feel like it. He walked cautiously into the living room, his eyes scanning everything. He was a rock. Solid, real. His presence pushed back against the wrongness of the room. "Okay, walk me through it. What happened?" I told him. I told him about the pounding on the door, the note on 15D, the text message. I showed him the dent. He nodded, his face grim. "A stalker, maybe? Some psycho in the building?" "I don't know," I lied, my gaze flickering towards the kitchen. I didn't show him the knife drawer, or my toothbrush in the fridge, or the open book on my bed. It was too much. He was here now, but if I told him everything, he'd call a hospital, not the police. He'd think I had finally snapped. "And the mirror?" he asked. I led him to the bathroom. The condensation had mostly evaporated, but the words were still faintly visible, like ghosts on the glass. "Found you." Dave stared at it, rubbing the back of his neck. "This is messed up, man. Seriously messed up. You need to call the cops. File a report." "And say what? Someone I never saw broke my door, then came back while I was asleep to play interior decorator and write on my mirror?" "Yes! That's exactly what you say," he insisted, his voice rising with frustration. "This isn't a joke, Leo. I know it's not a joke," I shot back, my own frayed nerves screaming. We stood there in the tense silence for a moment. Dave sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, look, I'm sorry, you're right, it's a lot. But I'm here now. We'll figure it out. First things first, let's get something to wedge that door shut. Then we'll call." He was being so logical, so rational. For a second, it felt like everything might be okay. The fear in my chest loosened its grip, just a fraction. We were two guys against some lunatic. We could handle it. We were standing in the living room, Dave suggesting we could move the bookshelf in front of the door, when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He cocked his head. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice low. My blood ran cold. I strained my ears, listening past the refrigerator's hum. I heard the distant city traffic, the groan of the building's pipes, nothing else. "Hear what?" I whispered. Dave's eyes unfocused for a second. He was listening intently to something I couldn't perceive. A voice, like a whisper, right next to my ear. My heart hammered against my ribs. "What did it say?" He shook his head, a flicker of confusion and alarm on his face. He took a step away from the spot where he'd been standing, looking around the empty room. "I don't know. I couldn't make it out. Just a sound." He rubbed his ear, looking unnerved. "Man, I must be more tired than I thought. My ears are ringing." He tried to laugh it off, but the sound was hollow. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The moi nu bait of normalcy had been taken. Now the Dao Hu sign was clear. It wasn't just for me anymore. It was here, with us, in the room. Before I could say anything, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, a look of relief on his face, happy for the distraction. He glanced at the screen. "It's my mom," he answered, turning away from me slightly. "Hey, Mom." "No, I'm at Leo's." "Yeah, he's fine. Just checking in on him." He was quiet for a moment, listening. I watched the tense line of his shoulders. I watched his knuckles turn white as he gripped the phone. He was nodding slowly, but it was a strange, jerky movement. Unnatural. He said one more thing into the phone. "Okay, I understand." He lowered the phone from his ear but didn't hang up. He just held it in his hand, the screen still lit. Then he turned to face me. The change was immediate and absolute. It was like a switch had been flipped behind his eyes. The concern, the friendship, the fatigue, it was all gone. His face was a placid, empty mask. His eyes were flat like dark glass. The warmth had drained out of him, leaving something cold and still in its place. "Dave?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. He just looked at me, a chilling, vacant stare that didn't seem to see me at all. "What's wrong?" "What did your mom say?" I asked, a knot of pure dread tightening in my stomach. This was it. The Vong Wei constriction was closing. His lips parted. When he spoke, it was his voice, but not his voice. It was a monotone, flat, no ups, no downs. Each word was delivered with the same mechanical weight as the last. "My mom says you're a liar." The air went out of my lungs. "What?" "Dave, what are you talking about? Are you kidding me?" He took a step toward me. It wasn't a walk. It was a glide. Smooth and unnerving. I took a step back. "She said you make things up," he continued in that same dead voice. "She said you're sick. You need help. but you won't accept it. You just lie. Dave, snap out of it, I yelled, my voice shaking. My hand instinctively went toward the coffee table where the knife had been. It wasn't there. I'd put it back. In the drawer. The perfectly arranged, menacing drawer. He kept coming, one slow, deliberate step after another. I kept backing away, my eyes wide with terror. This wasn't Dave. The thing that had whispered in his ear, it was inside him now. It was wearing his face, using his voice. This is a prank, right? This is a really sick joke, I stammered, my back hitting the wall. There was nowhere else to go. He stopped, just a few feet away. His expression didn't change. He wasn't angry. He wasn't anything. He was just a vessel, a puppet. The Diem Bung No flashpoint was here. My friend was gone, and this thing was in front of me. Dave, please, I begged. He slowly raised his hand. I flinched, expecting a blow, but he didn't move to strike me. He just pointed. His finger shaking slightly, he pointed past me, toward the corner of the room, toward the gramophone. It says you're not listening, the Dave thing said, its voice a dead, emotionless drone. It says you have to listen. And then his face contorted. The blank mask shattered. His eyes snapped back into focus, wide with a sudden searing agony. A noise tore from his throat, not a word, but a raw, animal scream of pain. He dropped his phone, which clattered to the floor, and grabbed his head with both hands, his fingers digging into his scalp. "Arg! Get out!" he shrieked, his body convulsing. He staggered backward and collapsed to his knees, still screaming, rocking back and forth. "Get out of my head!" I stared, frozen in place, my mind unable to process what was happening. 1 second I was facing a monster, the next my friend was on the floor, being tortured by an invisible force. He suddenly went quiet, his body trembling violently. He stayed on his knees, gasping for air, his face pale and slick with sweat. He slowly looked up at me, his eyes filled with a terrified confusion. "Leo," he whispered, his voice hoarse and broken. What the hell just happened? My head!" I couldn't speak. My throat was locked tight. My gaze, and his, was drawn by some unseen force back to the corner of the room. To the gramophone. It looked the same. The dark wood. The silent horn. The ugly, carved letters that I now knew, spelled G. Number. It wasn't a G anymore. My eyes traced the shape. There was the C. There was the vertical line that turned it into a G. But now there was something new. A third scratch, gouged into the wood with the same vicious force. It was a horizontal line, crossing the vertical one, turning the G into something more complex, something impossible. And next to it, 2 more shapes had been brutally carved. They were letters. They were raw, jagged, and perfectly clear. H-E-L-P. Dave stared at the letters gouged into the wood. H-E-L-P. His breathing was a wet, ragged sound in the quiet room. He looked from the gramophone to me, his eyes wide with a terror that mirrored my own. Color was returning to his face, but it was a sick, blotchy flush. "Leo!" he rasped, pushing himself up on shaking arms. He didn't stand. He scrambled backward on all fours, away from me, away from the gramophone, until his back hit the opposite wall. What was that? What the fuck was in my head? "I don't know," I said, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. My gaze was locked on the antique. It wasn't just furniture anymore. It was a gravestone. It was a message board. It was a voice, Dave stammered, his hands coming up to clutch his head again. It wasn't my mom. It wasn't. It knew her name. It used her name. He looked at me, pure panic in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I gotta go. I can't be here." He didn't wait for a response. He fumbled his way to his feet, stumbled over his own shoes, and practically fell out the splintered doorway. He didn't even grab his phone from the floor. I heard his footsteps pounding down the hallway, the sound frantic, desperate. Then the sound of the elevator doors opening, then closing. Then silence. A heavy, final silence. He was gone. The one piece of the real world I'd managed to pull into my nightmare had been ejected, spat out, and broken. I was alone. Completely. My knees gave out and I slid to the floor, my eyes still on the word help, a plea from whatever was trapped in that thing. A warning. For a long moment I did nothing. My mind was a blank white screen of static. Thought was impossible. Then, an idea cut through the noise. An anchor. Information. I wasn't helpless. I had a brain. I had the internet. I crawled over to my laptop on the coffee table. My hands shook so badly it took me 3 tries to open the lid. The screen flared to life, illuminating the dark room. The desktop background was a picture of a generic mountain scene. Normal. Safe. I opened a browser. The cursor blinked. What do I even search for? Sir, I started typing, my fingers clumsy on the keys. Antique gramophone carving letters. The results were junk. Conspiracy theories. Creepypastas. Useless. Okay. Be specific. I looked at the gramophone. There had to be a maker's mark, a model number. Anything. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to stand. I walked toward it. It felt like approaching a sleeping animal. I held my breath, half expecting the horn to swivel and face me. It didn't. I knelt down, my eyes scanning the dark wood. On the back, near the bottom, was a small, tarnished brass plate. I had to squint to read the faded engraving. Auden and Company, Maestro Model 7. I scrambled back to the laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Auden and Company, Maestro Model 7. The results were better. A few collector sites. Forum posts from elderly hobbyists discussing replacement needles. Nothing about haunted furniture. Nothing about things that wrote messages in the wood. It was just a thing. A mass-produced object from 100 years ago. This is stupid. It's not the object, it's the place. I opened a new tab. I typed in my building's address, then added a word. Death. My heart hammered against my ribs. This felt different. This felt like I was about to knock on a door I shouldn't touch. The first few results were nothing. Recent apartment listings. A news story about a water pipe bursting on the 5th floor 2 years ago. I kept scrolling. Down. Down. Past the ads and the real estate links. To the forgotten pages of the internet. And then I saw it. A link to a digitized newspaper archive. The headline was simple. Musician dies in apartment fire. The date was from 20 years ago. The address listed was mine. My building. My blood ran cold. I clicked the link. The page loaded slowly. An old, scanned article from the City Gazette. The text was slightly blurry. A picture sat in the middle of the column, grainy and black and white. It was a photo of a soot-stained, fire-gutted room. Firefighters stood in the background. And, in the center of the frame, miraculously untouched by the worst of the flames, was a piece of furniture. A dark wooden cabinet with a large brass horn. It was my gramophone. Oh my God, I whispered. I read the article. My eyes devoured the words. The victim's name was An Truong, a young, promising violinist, an immigrant who had moved to the city to study at the conservatory. He lived alone. The fire was ruled an accident. Faulty wiring, the report said. He died of smoke inhalation in his sleep. His body was found in the bedroom. According to the article, almost all of his possessions were destroyed. All except one, the Maestro Model 7 gramophone. A family heirloom, a friend was quoted as saying, the one thing he brought with him from his home country. Not An. The H mattered. The name felt heavy in my mouth. I was living in a dead man's apartment. I was living with his ghost. As I stared at his name on the screen, the web page flickered. The lines of text jiggled, like the signal on an old television. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. Must be a glitch with the archive site. But it happened again. The screen distorted, the letters melting into a digital soup. My hand went for the trackpad to refresh the page, but I froze. The letters weren't just glitching, they were moving. I watched, paralyzed, as the words from the article detached from their sentences. They slid across the screen, black pixels rearranging themselves against the white background. It was impossible. It wasn't a hack. It wasn't a virus. It was something else. The characters clicked into place, forming a new, clean line of text in the center of the screen. 5 stark, simple words. It wasn't me, WHO, hurt you. My breath hitched in my chest. It was him. Ah. He was seeing me. He was talking to me. My mind reeled. The door. The texts. The voice in Dave's head. If it wasn't him, then who? Tap. 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 The sound was sharp, loud, and right behind me. I spun around so fast my chair almost tipped over. I stared at the closet door. It was closed. My heart was a drum against my ribs. A pipe in the wall? My imagination? Look! Tap! 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 It came again, harder this time, unmistakable. Someone was knocking. From inside my closet. Before I could even process that, another sound joined it. Bang! 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 From the kitchen. I whipped my head around. The cabinet doors under the sink were rattling, shaking on their hinges. Thump. 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 The bathroom door. It shuddered in its frame. The closet. The kitchen. The bathroom. The hallway linen closet. They were all going at once, a cacophony of frantic, desperate pounding from every closed door inside my apartment. It was a storm of noise, echoing in the small space, coming from everywhere and nowhere. The air vibrated with it. The entire apartment had come alive, and it was screaming to be let in. Or out. "Stop it!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Stop!" I scrambled up, my only thought being the front door. "Get out! Get out now!" I didn't care about the broken lock. I would run. I lunged for the door, my hand reaching for the knob. The knocking stopped. All of it. At once. The sudden total silence was more terrifying than the noise had been. It dropped like a lead weight, thick and suffocating. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. My hand hovered over the doorknob. My eyes darted around the silent apartment. Nothing moved. Was it a test? Was it waiting? I had to get out. I grabbed the knob. And then I heard it. A new sound. Soft. Gentle. From the corner of the room. The gramophone. A faint crackle. The sound of a needle finding a groove. Then, music. It wasn't a loud, terrifying blast. It was a violin. A single, mournful violin, playing a melody that was beautiful and unbearably sad. It filled the silence, a song of pure loss. I backed away from the front door, my legs trembling. My survival instinct screamed at me to run, but my body was frozen, caught in the spell of that sorrowful music. I retreated, step by shaky step, until my back hit the wall. I slid down, my gaze fixed on the gramophone, on the spinning record that I had not put there, on the horn that was broadcasting a ghost's lament. The music was hypnotic. I found myself listening, really listening. The violin wept. It told a story of loneliness, of a dream cut short. It was On's music. And then, through the melody, another sound, a whisper. It was layered into the music, woven between the notes of the violin, a voice, broken and dissolving in static, like a bad radio signal. It was weak, strained, and filled with an urgent terror. "It's here." My blood turned to ice. "Can't stop it." The whisper was a struggle, each word an immense effort. On wasn't the threat. He was the first victim. He was the alarm system. "It's coming." The violin music cut out abruptly. The needle screeched across the record. The silence slammed back into the room, a physical force. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Don't look. Just don't look. But I had to. I forced my eyes open. I slowly looked from the silent gramophone down to the floor. Something was happening. At the very base of the gramophone, where the wooden legs met the hardwood floor, a darkness was gathering. It wasn't a shadow. It was wet. A single, black drop, thick like oil, seeped out from the wood. Then another, and another. They coalesced into a tiny, glistening puddle. I stared, my mind refusing to understand what I was seeing. The puddle grew, a slow, silent bleed. A thick, black fluid, like ink or tar, was leaking from the antique. It spread out from the base in a perfect circle, staining the wood floor a deep, permanent black. It didn't look like a liquid that belonged to this world. It was the color of a starless midnight sky, of a deep, endless hole. It was the color of a wrongness so profound it had taken physical form. It crept outward, slow, silent, and unstoppable. A stain of pure corruption, spreading across my floor, and I knew, with a certainty that went deeper than thought, that it wasn't just a stain, it was a presence, it was here. The spreading blackness on my floor wasn't a stain, it was a mouth, an opening. It was the physical manifestation of a scream that had been held for 20 years. My mind, which had been a screeching siren of panic a moment ago, fell into a strange, cold clarity. The puzzle pieces, scattered and terrifying, clicked into place. The letters gouged into the wood. H-E-L-P. He wasn't asking for my help. He was trying to give me his. The texts, the knocking on the door. He wasn't trying to get in. He was trying to make me leave. The voice in Dave's head. That was a desperate, failed attempt to use a living person as a speaker, to get a warning out. It wasn't me who hurt you. He was the canary in this coal mine of an apartment. And he'd been dead for 2 decades. The thing that killed him, the thing he was warning me about, it was here. It was this creeping ABYSS, bleeding out of his most prized possession. The black tar was a welcome mat for something awful. My breath hitched. My eyes were locked on the growing circle of void. It didn't bubble. It didn't steam. It just expanded, perfectly silent, consuming the light brown of the hardwood floor. It reached the leg of the coffee table and just flowed around it. A silent, black river. The silence was the worst part. An invading army should make noise. This was a violation on a cellular level. It was wrongness given form. Then it stopped. The circular edge, which had been creeping outward with a steady, nightmare-like pace, froze. The silence in the room changed. It was no longer just an absence of noise. It became heavy. Cold. I watched, unable to move, as the black puddle began to contract. It wasn't soaking into the floor. It was pulling itself together, gathering its mass toward the center. The glistening surface lost its wet sheen, becoming a flat, matte black. It drew inward, and then it began to rise, like dough, like a shadow detaching from its object. It pulled up from the floor, a 2-dimensional shape struggling to become 3-dimensional. It was a man-sized patch of nothing, a hole cut in the fabric of my living room. There were no features, no eyes, no mouth, just a shape, a vaguely humanoid silhouette made of pure, featureless black. "This is it," I whispered. The words were not my own. They were a realization that forced itself out of my throat. This is what killed him. The air in the apartment plunged. It wasn't a draft. It was a sudden, violent theft of all warmth. My skin tightened with goosebumps. I saw my own breath cloud in front of my face, a white puff of vapor in the dim light of the laptop screen. The cold was a physical presence, a weight that settled in my bones. The shadow thing moved. It didn't walk. It peeled itself off the floor. The bottom of the shape lifted, and it slithered up the wall nearest to the gramophone with a dry, rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It was a smear of darkness clinging to the drywall, elongated and distorted, its head brushing the ceiling. It was everywhere and nowhere, and then the room began to sing. It was a low hum at first. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Then I saw it. The large pane of glass in the window was vibrating. My eyes darted to the TV screen across the room. It was vibrating too, the black surface trembling, the mirror in the hallway, the glass on a framed picture of my parents. Everything made of glass in the apartment was being tuned to the same horrible frequency. A network of fear. Screech! The sound ripped through the air from the gramophone. It wasn't music. It was the shriek of the needle being dragged sideways across the record, a sound of pure protest. It was an alarm. It was a battle cry. The hum from the glass intensified, rising in pitch, a droning wail that met the gramophone's metallic shriek in the middle of the room. The two sounds fought each other, a sonic war between a trapped spirit and the thing that trapped it. The air vibrated, making my teeth ache. On the wall, the shadow pulsed. It flowed down from the ceiling, coiling on the floor like a serpent. Its formless head pointed directly at me. It knew who the living one was. It knew who the fresh meat was. My body finally broke its paralysis. It wasn't a decision. It was an animal instinct. Run. I yelled, a wordless sound of pure terror, and threw myself sideways, away from the wall where my back had been pressed. I scrambled on my hands and knees, my only thought the front door. The broken lock didn't matter. Nothing mattered but getting out. The shadow launched. It didn't make a sound as it moved. It shot across the room, a silent, black spear aimed for the spot I'd been seconds before. Crack! The floor lamp beside the sofa flew through the air, tumbling end over end, and slammed into the shadow. There was no solid impact. The lamp hit the blackness and just disintegrated. The metal bent, the lampshade shredded, and the wood base splintered into 1,000 pieces, as if it had been thrown into a wood chipper. It didn't stop the shadow, but it seemed to disrupt it. The shadow's form wavered like smoke in a breeze. Whoosh! A stack of old magazines on the coffee table launched themselves, page by page, a flurry of paper, shuriken that flew into the dark form. They vanished into it, consumed without a trace. On was fighting. He was throwing my apartment at this thing. The shadow reformed, its focus back on me. I was on my feet, stumbling, my hand on the back of the sofa. Get out! The voice was a whisper, but it was inside my head. It was reedy, faint, and filled with a frantic energy. On's voice. The shadow lunged again. This time the heavy armchair I had been sitting in just minutes before lifted off the floor. It wobbled for a second, then shot sideways like a cannonball, ramming into the shadow's midsection. The impact was immense. The shadow was thrown back, dissipating against the wall with a silent, violent splash. The armchair exploded. Wood, fabric, and stuffing blew apart in a shower of debris. I used the moment. I ran. My legs felt like they were moving through water, but I forced them onward. 5 steps to the door. 4. The shadow pulled itself together again, pouring down the wall like black paint. It was faster this time. Angrier. It ignored the debris. It ignored the ghost. It was coming for me. 3 steps. The coffee table itself flipped, a heavy slab of wood and metal spinning through the air. It hit the shadow. For a split second, the dark shape was blotted out. But then the table splintered, the sound of snapping wood sharp and loud in the chaos. The shadow flowed through the wreckage of the table as if it were mist. 2 steps. I could almost feel the cold metal of the doorknob. The shadow was right behind me. I could feel the temperature dropping even further, a zone of absolute zero chasing me. I didn't dare look back. My fingers touched the doorknob. Bang! A tremendous crash erupted from behind me. I flinched, my hand spasming on the knob. I couldn't help it. I glanced back. The gramophone itself, the heavy antique, had been torn from its spot in the corner. It was hovering a foot off the ground, the great brass horn aimed like a weapon. The spirit was all at Owound.ng, its anchor, its home, in one last, desperate attack. It hurled itself at the shadow. They collided. For one brilliant, blinding moment, there was light. When the solid wood of the gramophone hit the formless shadow, a flash of blue-white energy erupted, forcing me to squeeze my eyes shut. A sound like a lightning strike inside a metal box cracked through the air. The light was gone as quickly as it came. I opened my eyes. The shadow was gone. Vanished. The gramophone lay in a heap of shattered wood and twisted brass in the middle of the room. Destroyed. Broken. Silence. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I stood, panting, my hand still on the doorknob. Is it over? Did he do it? Did he save me? My eyes scanned the room. The chaos was absolute. Broken furniture, shredded paper, splinters of wood, everywhere. But the blackness was gone. The cold was receding. And then I saw it. Amid the wreckage, a detail. When the lamp had shattered, the bulb had flashed for a fraction of a second. I saw it. The shadow had recoiled from that brief flash. When the gramophone hit it, the resulting spark of energy had been blinding. Light. My God! It's scared of light. A wave of hysterical relief washed over me. I had a weapon. All I had to do was turn on the ceiling light above me flickered. My head snapped up. It flickered again. Once. Twice. The low humming sound returned, but it wasn't coming from the glass anymore. It was coming from the light fixture itself. A book, thrown during the fight, had struck it. A crack ran along the glass dome cover. The light flickered again, more violently this time. It was a dying heartbeat, and with each flicker, in the split second of near darkness, I saw it. In the corner of the room, near the ceiling. A patch of black. It was small. But it was there. Flicker. It was gone. Flicker. It was there. Slightly bigger. Flicker. Gone. Flicker. There. Bigger still. No, 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 no. The fighting. On's desperate defense. It hadn't just been a fight. It had been destroying the lights. The lamp was gone. The TV was cracked and dark. And now, the main light. My hand fumbled for the light switch by the door, my fingers slapping against the wall. I found it and flipped it, up and down. Up and down. Nothing. The flickering continued on its own rhythm. A death rattle. Flicker. The patch of darkness on the ceiling was the size of a dinner plate. Flicker. The size of a tire. I had to get out. I twisted the doorknob. The overhead light gave one last, brilliant flash, illuminating the entire room in stark, white detail. And in that final instant of light, I saw the shadow. It wasn't on the ceiling anymore. It was on the floor, right in front of the door. It had reformed completely, a tall, silent shape of solid night. It wasn't wavering. It wasn't weak. It was waiting for me. Then, with a sound like a gunshot, the light bulb exploded. Glass and sparks rained down. The room was plunged into an almost total blackness. The only light was the weak, cold glow of the laptop screen 20 feet away, casting long, monstrous shadows from the wreckage. It wasn't enough light. Not nearly enough. And standing between me and the door, I could just make out its form, darker than the darkness around it. It was here, and I had no weapon left. The darkness was a solid thing, a wall. The weak glow from the laptop screen across the room was a distant, dying star, doing nothing to pierce the absolute black that stood between me and the door. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic prisoner. My weapon was gone. My one advantage, discovered in a flash of dying light, had been snuffed out. The fight. The chaos. The ghost of On, throwing my life's meager possessions at the creature. It wasn't just a desperate defense. My mind, slick with adrenaline, started working in a way it never had before. It saw the pattern, the lamp, the TV, the main light, each one destroyed, each one a source of light, extinguished. This wasn't collateral damage, this was tactical. The shadow hadn't just been fighting On, it had been maneuvering him. It had used his rage, his protective instinct, to systematically disarm the room. It had goaded him into destroying the very things that kept it at bay. It wanted the dark, and in his final sacrificial act, On had given it exactly that. It was a trap, not for me. It was a trap for On, and I had just watched him walk right into it, dragging me with him. Hope, fragile and stupid, sparked in the panic. Other lights. The kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom. They were on a different circuit, weren't they? They had to be. My back scraped against the wall as I slid away from the door, away from that patch of deeper darkness. My eyes stayed locked on it, trying to gauge its position by the way it blotted out the faint glow from the laptop. It didn't move. It was patient. It knew it had won this round. My hand slapped against the cool plaster of the wall, fumbling, searching. My fingers found a bank of switches, 3 of them, lined up. My thumbs shot out, jamming them all upwards in one frantic motion. Bathroom. Bedroom. Kitchen. Click. 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 3 dead, hollow sounds in the suffocating silence. No hum of electricity. No flood of life-saving light, nothing. I flicked them again. Down. Up. Nothing. The clicks echoed in the room, a tiny, pathetic sound of my own failure. The breaker. It must have tripped the main breaker. Or worse, the faint hope I'd clung to dissolved into ice water in my veins. I wasn't just in a dark room. I was in a dead box. A coffin. My eyes darted back to the laptop light. It seemed weaker now, a flickering candle in a hurricane, and the shadow, it was no longer just a static shape by the door. It was moving. Not walking, it was bleeding. It flowed out from its core, a silent spill of ink, seeping across the floorboards. The darkness was expanding, eating the faint light, a living eclipse. The edges of the wrecked furniture softened, then disappeared as the black tide washed over them. No, the word was a dry rasp in my throat. No, no. My world shrank to the 20 feet between me and the laptop, and that world was being swallowed whole. A new sound. It came from the center of the room, from the heap of shattered wood and twisted brass that used to be a gramophone. It wasn't loud. It was a dry, scraping noise, like a fingernail dragging across slate. It was the sound of a memory, a whisper, forced through a broken throat. F, 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 Hef, Hef, Hef. Brer. The sound was barely there, a ghost of a word. He was trying to speak through the wreckage. Fire. My blood went cold. A fire. The archives. The old news report about the previous tenant's death. Tragic accident. Faulty wiring. Apartment fire. It wasn't an accident. It couldn't have been. It was this. He was fighting this thing. And when he had no other choice, when the lights were gone and the darkness was closing in, he had done the only thing he could think of. He had tried to burn it out of existence. It was his last resort, his final, failed attack. And now it was my only option left. Wham! The sound was so loud, so violent, it felt like a physical blow. The front door, which had been standing slightly ajar, slammed shut. The entire frame shook. I flinched, my whole body tensing for an attack. Then came a second sound, even more final. Chunk. The heavy, metallic slam of a deadbolt sliding home. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the building settling. That was a lock. A lock I didn't even know worked. I was sealed in. A wave of nausea rolled through me. It wasn't the shadow that had locked the door. It was on. He wasn't trying to keep it out. He was trying to keep it in here with me. He was finishing the fight he started 20 years ago, and he had just drafted me. There was no escape. The path wasn't out. It was through. To the kitchen. My mind latched onto the thought. The junk drawer. Next to the sink. There was a lighter in there. A cheap blue Bic lighter I'd used for candles once. It was my only matchstick in hell. The slithering started. It was the sound of dry canvas being dragged over splintered wood. It came from the direction of the front door, from the heart of the spreading blackness. It was moving. It knew I had a plan. It was hunting now. My feet were bare. I lifted one, placing it down with infinite care. The floor was a minefield of debris. Wood splinters, shredded paper, and now, I remembered, shattered glass from the ceiling light. I took a breath. And another. Silence your breathing. Don't let it hear you breathing. I took a step. My bare soul pressed down on something sharp. A sliver of glass. A hot, sharp pain shot up my leg. I bit down hard on my lip, stifling a scream, tasting the coppery tang of my own blood. I couldn't make a sound. I froze, balanced on one foot, listening. The slithering stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was an active, listening silence. It knew I was here. It knew I was hurt. It was waiting for me to cry out. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I could feel the pulse in my neck, in my temples. It was so loud, surely I could hear it. Slowly, I lowered my wounded foot. I put my weight on it, ignoring the grinding pain. I had to move. The kitchen was on the other side of the living room, 15 feet away. An ocean of darkness. I remembered the layout. Sofa here, wreckage of the armchair there, flipped coffee table, somewhere in the middle. I extended my hands, fingers outstretched, and began to shuffle forward, my stocking feet whispering on the wood. 1 step. The floor was gritty with dust and plaster. 2 steps. My hand brushed something soft and fuzzy. The stuffing from the ruined armchair. The slithering started again. To my left this time. It was circling, flanking me. I moved faster. A clumsy, shuffling run. My shin collided hard with the leg of the overturned coffee table. I gasped, a sharp intake of air, and clapped my hands over my mouth. Too late. The sound changed. It was no longer a slither. It was a rush. A dry, swift whoosh of air, coming straight for me. I threw myself sideways, a pure animal reaction. I tripped over a chunk of the broken lamp and went down hard, my shoulder and cheekbone smacking against the floor. A wave of intense cold washed over the spot where I had been standing a second before. It wasn't just a chill. It was a void of heat, a deep space cold that seemed to suck the life out of the air. It brushed the back of my neck, a phantom touch that made every hair on my body stand on end. It was so close. I scrambled on my hands and knees, ignoring the pain, ignoring everything but the single, burning goal. My fingers hit the smooth, cool linoleum of the kitchen floor. I was there. I pulled myself up, using the edge of the counter for leverage. My hands flew across the surface, knocking over a salt shaker. The sound of the plastic rattling on the floor was like a gunshot. The drawer. The junk drawer. My fingers found the small, recessed handle. I yanked it open. The drawer screeched on its runners, a sound that tore through the silence. Inside, a mess of metal and paper. My fingers plunged in, frantically digging. A fork. Old mail. A rubber band. The sharp point of a screw. Where is it? The cold was back. It was in the kitchen with me. It was pooling around my feet. A freezing fog climbing up my legs. The slithering sound was gone. It was silent again. It was right here. It was right behind me. My fingers closed around the smooth, familiar plastic cylinder. The lighter. I pulled it out. My thumb was slick with sweat. It slid off the small metal wheel. I tried again, pressing down hard, my whole body shaking. Flick. No spark. "Come on," I whispered, the words trembling. The cold was crawling up my spine, a hand of ice on the back of my neck. I braced my thumb and scraped it down hard. Flick. FSSSSSSSSs. A small, brave flame erupted into life, sputtering yellow and blue. It was pathetic. It was beautiful. It was everything. I spun around, holding it up like a crucifix. It was right there. It was directly in front of my face, not 2 feet away. So close I could feel the absence of it. The tiny, flickering flame threw my own terrified face into sharp relief, casting a monstrous dancing shadow on the cabinets behind me. But it did not illuminate the thing in front of me. The light didn't hit it. It didn't reflect off it. The light bent, warped, and slid around it, as if the shape itself was a hole in the world. The blueprint of my apartment was visible on all sides of it, the wall, the refrigerator, the doorway, but where the tall, man-shaped silhouette stood, there was nothing. Not blackness. Blackness is a color. Blackness is a presence. This was an absence, a cutout, a wound in the fabric of reality that had the shape of a man. The flame shined on the wall behind it, and I could see the wall through the shape, but distorted and warped, like looking through a faulty lens. It ate the light. It ate the space. It ate the world, and it was looking right at me. The flame was a shield, a tiny, sputtering, plastic and butane shield against a hole in the universe. My thumb ached, the serrated metal wheel digging into the flesh. My knuckles were white. If I let go, if the flame died, I died. It was that simple. The absence in front of me didn't move. It didn't have to. The cold it gave off was a physical presence, a creeping frost that numbed my skin and made my teeth ache. I could see the chipped paint on the kitchen cabinets right through its chest, the image rippling as if seen through a summer heat haze. This thing wasn't in my apartment. It was a puncture into my apartment. I had to move. The bathroom, medicine cabinet, the bottle of rubbing alcohol I bought for a cut weeks ago, fire, on silent scream from the gramophone, FFFIIRE. He knew. It was the only way. A bigger fire. I took one step back. My bare foot, the one I'd cut on the glass, protested with a sharp, grinding pain. I ignored it. The hole in the world that was a man remained still. I took another step back, my eyes locked on it, the lighter held out in front of me. The tiny flame was the only thing in my entire world. My back hit the door frame leading out of the kitchen. The living room was a sea of blackness, broken only by the weak, dying pulse of my laptop screen far across the room. I had to cross it to get to the hall, to the bathroom. I slid along the wall, my shoulder blades scraping against the plaster. The flame cast my shadow long and monstrous behind me, making it dance and writhe on the wall. And then I saw it. It was in the halo of the lighter's glow, on the wall opposite me, a crack, a thin, jagged line in the plaster running down from the ceiling, probably there for years. But something was wrong with it. It was too dark. It was a wet, spreading black that looked less like a crack and more like a wound. As I watched, the darkness bled out from the line, seeping into the wallpaper. It was slow, a deliberate stain, and it was taking a shape, a smaller shape, hunched, twisted. No, it can't be, my mind screeched. My eyes were playing tricks on me. Stress, fear. It had to be. I blinked, hard, hoping to clear my vision. It was worse. The stain had grown, coalescing. It was pulling itself from the wall. A second shadow. Not a perfect absence like the first one. This one was greasy, indistinct, like something made of old smoke and wet ash. A sound vibrated through the floorboards. It came from the tall shape in the kitchen doorway. It wasn't a voice. It was the low, grinding rumble of stone on stone, a vibration that went straight to the fillings in my teeth. It was a question. From the wall, the new shape answered. A thin, high-pitched noise like ripping silk. They were talking. Oh, God, they were talking to each other. I wasn't in a room with a monster. I was caught between two of them. The trap wasn't just the locked door. The apartment itself was the trap. The air shifted. The wreckage of the gramophone in the center of the room rattled. A burst of static, sharp and frantic, tore through the silence. KRRKZZZTGETOUTSSSHHHK. Ah! He was screaming, a garbled, electric panic. He knew. He hadn't just been fighting one. He had been fighting a nest. The circle was closing. The tall absence slid from the kitchen doorway, flowing into the living room like spilled oil. It moved with an unnatural smoothness, a predator that didn't need legs. To my right, the thing on the wall peeled itself away completely, a two-dimensional horror detaching to become three-dimensional. It hunched near the floor, a dark, fetal thing crawling on limbs that were too long and too thin. I was pinned. Bathroom to my left, down the hall. But the path was blocked. The small one was in the way. The big one was coming for me from the kitchen. My mind raced. A frantic animal in a cage. Fight or flight. No, flight was gone. The door was locked. It was only fight. Fire. I needed more fire. Now! The sofa. Old, dusty, stuffed with dry, flammable foam. It was a 20-year-old tinderbox. It was 5 feet away. A desperate, insane idea bloomed in the terror. A wall of fire. I could create a barrier, a wall of pure light and heat to hold them back while I got to the door. Or the bathroom. Or just have one more second to breathe. It was a stupid plan. It was the only plan. With a yell that was more of a croak, I reared my arm back and threw the lighter. The little blue plastic missile sailed through the dark in a perfect arc, the tiny flame trailing like a tracer bullet. It landed right on the faded floral cushions of the sofa, and went out. Puff! Just like that. The flame vanished, swallowed by the fabric. The room plunged back into absolute, crushing darkness, save for the pathetic glow of the laptop. A dead, hollow silence fell. The silence of my own failure. I had thrown away my only weapon. My only light. My only hope. The rush came from the left. It wasn't a sound. It was a change in the air pressure, a sudden, violent displacement as the small, hunched thing lunged. I threw myself backward, tripping over my own feet, and crashed into the wall. A wave of that profound, soul-deep cold washed over the spot where my head had been an instant before. It missed me by inches. I felt the static of its passing raise the hairs on my arm. The other one was coming. I could feel the floor vibrating with its silent approach. I was on the ground, disoriented, weaponless. It was over. Crack! A flash of brilliant white light, a sound like a gunshot. The room was illuminated for a split second, a single perfect frame of a nightmare. I saw the big one, the void, its arm outstretched, its non-hand inches from my face. I saw the smaller one, a twisted knot of shadow, recoiling from the flash. The TV. In the center of the room, the old CRT television that An had smashed earlier exploded. Not just the screen breaking, it blew apart from the inside out. A shower of glass and plastic shrapnel erupted outwards. An's last, defiant act. His final gambit. A single brilliant blue spark from the shattered cathode ray tube arced through the air. It was beautiful. It was a miracle. It flew in a slow, lazy curve and landed on the edge of the thin, sun-bleached curtains hanging over the window. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a tiny orange line appeared on the fabric. It raced upwards, a hungry serpent of light. Whoosh! The fire didn't just catch. It detonated. The dry, old curtain erupted in a sheet of flame, climbing the wall in an instant. The living room was flooded with a brilliant, roaring orange-yellow light. It was life. It was salvation. And it brought with it the screaming. It wasn't a human sound. The two shapes, caught in the sudden, violent daylight, convulsed. The tall absence thrashed, its form wavering and distorting like a mirage. The smaller one shrieked, that high, tearing sound, as it scrambled back toward the wall, its limbs flailing. The light was agony to them. The heat was poison. They recoiled, contracting, shrinking away from the roaring blaze that was now spreading from the curtains to the ancient wallpaper. The fire was a beast, and it was on my side. This was my chance. I scrambled to my feet, my eyes stinging from the smoke that was already starting to fill the room. The door. The front door. I ran, stumbling over the debris, my lungs burning. My hands found the cold metal of the deadbolt. It was stiff, unused for years. My fingers, slick with sweat and grime, slipped off the knob. "Come on!" I swore, my voice raw. I gripped it with both hands, putting my whole body into it. The fire was roaring behind me now, a furnace of sound and heat. The shadows were screaming. The plaster was cracking from the heat. Chunk! The bolt slid back. It was open. Freedom was one turn of a knob away. I couldn't resist. I had to look back. One last look to make sure they were gone, burned away. I turned, and the real horror finally showed itself. The fire was doing more than just burning them. The intense light and heat were showing me what I couldn't see before. The cracks in the walls. They weren't just on one wall. They were everywhere. A fine, web-like network of fissures covering the ceiling, the floor, every surface. And from those cracks they were pouring out. Not two, hundreds. Tiny, writhing slivers of shadow, squirming, insect-like things, no bigger than my hand. They spilled from the cracks like ants from a shattered nest, driven out by the fire. They flowed down the walls and across the ceiling, a carpet of living darkness, all moving away from the light, turning the room into a single undulating mass of twitching nightmares. The two larger ones weren't invaders. They were just the scouts. This wasn't a haunting, it was an infestation. And I had just set fire to the nest. The roar was a physical thing. A beast of heat and sound that slammed into me, sucking the air from my lungs. Smoke, thick and oily, clawed at my throat. My eyes streamed. The fire was an animal, wild and alive, devouring the wall, the ceiling, the very air. For 1 second, it was glorious. It was war. Then the screaming started again, not just from the two big ones, but from the walls themselves. 1,000 high-pitched, chittering noises, a chorus of tearing silk and grinding glass. The swarm. They poured from the cracks, a river of black oil, not running from the fire but flowing around it, a living tide of wrongness. The room was no longer my living room. It was their hive, and I had just kicked it. I turned back to the door. My hands, slick with sweat, fumbled with the knob below the deadbolt. The smart lock. The goddamn smart lock Anne had installed. The one that never worked right. I twisted. Nothing. Just the solid, unmoving click of a dead mechanism. No, 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 I muttered, my voice a ragged cough. I yanked at it. I slammed my shoulder into the wood. The door was solid oak. It didn't budge. Behind me, the roar of the fire grew louder, the heat more intense. The paint on the wall beside me was starting to bubble and peel, small black blisters forming and bursting. The chittering rose in pitch, a frantic, furious sound. They were getting closer. My phone! Where was my phone? I slapped my pockets. Empty. It must have fallen out when I went down. It was somewhere on the floor, somewhere in the middle of that squirming carpet of nightmares. Useless. I gripped the knob again, twisting with all my strength. My fingers screamed in protest. The metal was unyielding. A piece of burning wallpaper detached from the ceiling and floated down like a black snowflake, landing on my arm. I cried out, slapping it off, a sharp, stinging pain left in its wake. The apartment was an oven. The air was poison. The lock was a tombstone. And then another sound cut through the chaos. It started low, a single, sustained cello note. It came from the center of the room, from the wreckage of the gramophone. I glanced back, my heart seizing. The shattered wooden box, now licked by the edges of the spreading fire, was glowing, not with the orange light of the flames, but with a soft, pulsing blue, the same color as the spark that had started all this. The music swelled. The sad, broken melody An had been playing was gone. This was different. This wasn't a lament, it was a charge. Horns blared from the single warped speaker, a frantic, powerful crescendo of strings. It was the sound of a symphony going to war. It was angry. It was defiance carved into sound. He was still here. He wasn't just a trapped echo. He was fighting. He was fighting with me. The music was his weapon, a shield of pure sound pushing back against the cacophony of the swarm. The effect on the shadows was immediate. The frantic chittering faltered. The tide of small, writhing things stopped its advance. They recoiled from the music as if it were a physical blow. But the big ones, they were adapting. The tall absence by the kitchen entrance and the hunched, greasy thing that had peeled from the wall began to change. They stopped thrashing. They stopped screaming. They began to move toward the center of the room, toward the fire and the defiant music, and as they moved, the smaller shadows were drawn to them. I watched, frozen by the door, as a new horror unfolded. The tiny, insect-like things flowed into the larger forms, not like water into a bucket, but like darkness being absorbed into a greater darkness. They merged. They coalesced. The two distinct shapes dissolved, pulling the entire swarm with them until there was only one thing in the center of my living room. It was a column. A pillar of absolute nothing that reached from the floor to the ceiling. It didn't have a shape. It was a hole cut out of the world. A vortex of anti-life that drank the light. The roaring orange flames that touched its edges simply vanished, not extinguished with a hiss of smoke, but just ceasing to exist. The heat in the room plunged. A wave of profound, arctic cold rolled outward from the pillar, fighting back against the furnace of the fire. My breath plumed in front of my face. The sweat on my skin turned instantly to ice. The room was being torn in two. A battle between fire and the void, between heat and cold, between sound and silence. The roaring symphony from the gramophone fought against the crushing pressure of that silent column, the notes seeming to bend and strain in the air. The pillar of shadow pulsed. It was trying to smother everything, the fire, the music, the light. It was trying to smother me. I could feel its presence pressing on my mind, a cold, heavy weight promising nothing but the end. This was it. The final move. Checkmate. I backed away from the door, my body screaming to run, but there was nowhere left. The heat from the fire on my right was blistering. The cold from the pillar on my left was freezing my blood. I was trapped between two warring gods in a space the size of a shipping container. Then, An's music hit its peak. A single, impossibly high, impossibly loud note from a violin screamed out from the gramophone. It was a sound that felt like it could shatter glass, shatter bone, shatter reality itself. The gramophone exploded. It wasn't a fiery explosion. It was a detonation of pure energy. A silent, concussive wave of brilliant blue light erupted outwards from the center of the room. It wasn't hot, it wasn't cold. It was just pressure. A wave of pure force, The shockwave hit me like a physical punch, throwing me back against the door, so hard my teeth rattled. It slammed into the fire, and for a split second the flames flattened against the walls, cowering. It struck the pillar of shadow, and the great column of nothing wavered, its form distorting violently, like a reflection in a kicked bucket of water. For one perfect, suspended moment, the entire world held its breath. The fire was silent, the shadows were reeling. Beep. The sound was tiny, insignificant, almost comical. I looked down. On the smart lock, a small LED light, which had been dead for a year, was now glowing a steady, brilliant green. My brain didn't even have time to process it. My hand acted on its own, a desperate animal reflex. I twisted the knob. It turned. The latch clicked back. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I threw myself backward, pulling the door open with me, and stumbled out into the blessedly neutral, blessedly real air of the apartment building hallway. I fell to the linoleum floor, my legs giving out, my whole body shaking. The door swung shut behind me with a heavy, final thud. Silence. I lay there on the cool floor, gasping, my lungs burning, my body a map of pain. The hallway was quiet. No alarms. No one else was out here. It was just me and the closed door. I pushed myself up onto my elbows, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My chest heaved. I coughed. A dry, racking sound. I waited. I waited for the smoke detectors in the hall to go off. I waited for the smell of burning to seep under the door. I waited for the heat, for the sounds of the fire department, for something, anything, nothing. I stared at my apartment door, at the small gap between the bottom of the wood and the floor. My eyes were fixed on that thin, dark line. No smoke was coming out, not a wisp. The orange glow of the inferno that had been consuming my home was gone. There was no light at all visible through the crack. There was no sound. The roaring fire, the screaming symphony, the chittering swarm, all of it had vanished. There was only a deep, perfect, and complete silence. And a cold. A thin, dark line of cold was seeping out from under the door. It wasn't a draft. It was a presence. A stillness that was heavier than sound. A darkness that was more solid than light. It crept across the linoleum toward me, chilling the air, deadening the world around it. I had escaped the fire. I had survived the attack. But I hadn't won. Whatever was in my apartment had just eaten the fire. And now it was quiet, and it was waiting. The sirens were a dull smear of sound by the time they arrived. I don't remember much of it clearly. Just flashes, heavy coats, smelling of wet soot and stale coffee. Faces that looked at me with professional pity. Questions I couldn't answer. Sir, can you tell us what happened? Was anyone else inside? Do you know what might have started the fire? I sat on the cold linoleum of the hallway, a thin blanket around my shoulders, and shook my head. What could I say? That my dead boyfriend's ghost started a war with shadow monsters in my living room using a haunted gramophone? They'd put me in a different kind of uniform, in a room with softer walls. So I lied. A frayed lamp cord. A spark. I was asleep. I woke up to the smoke. It was a stupid, simple story. They nodded, wrote it down. They broke down the door. The same door I had thrown myself through just minutes before. Now it took 2 firefighters and a battering ram to get it open. I watched them go in, disappearing into the darkness that had been my front hall. I waited for shouts, for the flare of flashlights cutting through smoke. But there was no smoke. Not anymore. One of the firemen came back out, his face etched with confusion. He pulled his helmet off, wiping a grimy hand across his forehead. This is a weird one, he said to his partner. Extinguished. Looks like it burned hot and fast, then just stopped. All the sprinklers are dry. Another one poked his head out. No body. Place is scorched, but it's empty. He got out. He nodded toward me. They let me go. There was nothing left to do. No case to solve. Just a bizarre incident report to file. They called it a flash fire, with an unexplained cessation. Insurance words. Words for things that made no sense. They didn't see the hole in reality that had swallowed the flames. They just saw cooled embers. They didn't feel the soul-deep cold that had settled in the apartment's bones. They just noted the broken windows. I never went back in. I couldn't. I walked away from the flashing lights, from the building that held the ghost of my life, and found the nearest, cheapest hotel I could. The room smelled of bleach and desperation. The bedspread was a scratchy, faded yellow. The TV was bolted to the dresser. I left it on, the volume low, just for the noise. A local news channel was running a brief segment on the fire. Mysterious blaze in downtown apartment complex, the anchorwoman said with rehearsed gravity. They showed a shot of my building. My window, a dark, empty square. No injuries were reported. The cause is under investigation. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, the thin hotel towel wrapped around my waist. My skin still felt raw, a patchwork of phantom burns and freezing patches. I felt scooped out. Hollow. The fight was over. I had survived. An had saved me. And now he was gone. The gramophone was a pile of ash and splinters. The last echo of him had been spent in that final, impossible blast of sound and light. I was alone again. Truly alone. The thought was a hard, cold stone in my gut. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A jolt went through me, sharp and electric. I stared at it. The screen lit up. Unknown number. My heart started a frantic, heavy rhythm against my ribs. A wrong number. A telemarketer. That's all it was. It had to be. But my hand trembled as I reached for it. My mind screamed at me. Don't answer. Don't you dare answer it. Throw it against the wall. It's them. They found you. The buzzing was insistent. A snake rattling in the quiet room. My thumb hovered over the red icon to decline the call. Just kill it. Block the number. Forget it happened. But I couldn't. What if it wasn't them? What if it was the police with more questions? The insurance company? What if it was something normal? I had to know. I couldn't live in this new fear, jumping at every shadow, every ringing phone. I had to rip the Band-Aid off. My thumb slid across the screen and pressed the green icon. I held the phone to my ear, my knuckles white. I said nothing. I just listened. Silence. Not the dead air of a bad connection. It was a listening silence, a waiting silence. I could feel the presence on the other end, an attention focused entirely on me. My breath hitched in my throat. I was about to hang up, to slam the phone down and run. Then, the music started. It was a violin. The sound was so clean, so impossibly pure, it made the hairs on my arm stand up. It wasn't coming from a speaker. It felt like it was being played right inside my head. It was the same sad, beautiful melody An used to love, the one from the gramophone. But it was different now. There was no static, no broken, mournful quality. This was the song as it was meant to be heard. Clear, perfect, whole. It was a single, heartbreakingly beautiful strain that rose and fell with a gentle grace. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't an attack. It felt like a thank you, like a final, soft goodbye. The name formed in my mind, a fragile hope. Was that you? Are you okay? The short, poignant melody played through one last time, each note a perfect, shimmering drop of sound in the cheap hotel room. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I had ever heard. It was the sound of a ghost untethered, a final piece of a soul set free. The music ended. Again, there was only silence. I held my breath, waiting, pleading. For another note. For a voice. For anything. An? I whispered, my voice cracking. The silence stretched. It became heavy. It changed. And then, another sound came through the phone. It wasn't music. It wasn't An. It was a whisper. A dry, scraping sound. Like sandpaper on bone. Like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It was low, guttural. And it was made of 1,000 blended voices, all whispering the same words in a horrifying unison. We. The sound chilled the blood in my veins. It was the voice of the swarm. It was the voice of the pillar of nothing. No. My grip on the phone tightened. I tried to pull it away from my ear, but my arm wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed. Where? The whisper was an inch from my eardrum. It was inside my head. The news anchor on the TV droned on, oblivious. The world outside this phone call had ceased to exist. You are, the line clicked, dead. I screamed, a raw, wordless sound, and hurled the phone away from me. It hit the opposite wall with a cheap plastic crack and clattered to the floor. I scrambled backward on the bed, my back hitting the cold wall, my eyes locked on the broken piece of plastic on the floor, as if it were a coiled snake. They knew. They knew where I was. It wasn't the apartment they wanted. It wasn't the gramophone. It was me. It was always me. The fire didn't stop them. Escaping didn't stop them. On sacrifice hadn't stopped them. It had only bought me a few minutes of quiet. My chest was heaving. I needed to run, get my clothes, get out of the room, get out of the city. I pushed myself off the bed, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. My eyes darted around the room, looking for threats in the shadows cast by the single dim lamp. My gaze fell on the large, cheap mirror bolted to the wall above the dresser, and I froze. I stood there, half naked, trembling, my reflection staring back at me. Except it wasn't. My reflection didn't move. I was shaking, my chest rising and falling in ragged gasps, but the man in the mirror was perfectly still. His expression was calm, placid. He simply stood there, looking at me. And then he smiled. It was not my smile. The corners of his mouth pulled back and back and back, wider and wider, stretching the skin of his face into an impossible, predatory grin. It was a seam splitting open in his face, a raw red wound of a smile that showed too many teeth. He stood there, in my skin, in my place in the world, and he smiled at me with that awful, broken mouth. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat, a solid block of ice. I just stood there, staring at the thing wearing my face, and the cold that had seeped from my apartment floor now flooded my veins. The trap wasn't the apartment. The hunt wasn't over. It was just getting started. And the thing being hunted was already inside. I don't run, I burrow. Each night, a new hole. A different cheap motel off a different nameless highway exit. The names blur together. The Sunset Inn, the Crestview Motor Lodge, the Starlight. They all smell the same. Stale cigarettes and cleaning chemicals. A ghost of bleach. I only use cash. I buy burner phones from gas stations. One call to check that my bank account hasn't been frozen. Then I snap the SIM card in half and toss the phone in a dumpster miles away from where I'm staying. It's a ritual, a prayer against being found. My life has become a series of small, paranoid steps. Pay cash. Don't use your name. Never stay more than one night. Look over your shoulder. Always look over your shoulder. I left the city behind. I drove until the skyscrapers were just needles on the horizon, then kept driving until they were gone completely. Now it's all flat land and empty sky. The paranoia is a constant hum beneath my thoughts. It's the engine of my car. It's the static from the shitty motel TV. It's the buzzing of the neon sign outside my window. They know where you are. The thought is a hook in my brain. I live in the moments between the fear. The 20 minutes in the shower where the hot water feels real. The first bite of a greasy burger from a 24-hour diner. Tiny anchors to a world I'm not sure I'm part of anymore. This room has brown carpets with darker brown stains. The air conditioner rattles like a dying man. I stand under the shower, the water pressure weak, and let it run over my head. I close my eyes. I try not to think about a smile that wasn't mine in a mirror. I try not to think about a voice made of 100 whispering voices. He smiled at me with my own face. The water turns cold. I don't notice at first. My skin is already cold. When I do, I shut it off with a jolt. I grab the towel. It's thin and smells faintly of rust. As I dry my arm, I feel a dull ache. I look down. There's a bruise on my bicep. A small, faint mark, the color of a day-old shadow. I don't remember hitting anything, but my last few days have been a blur of frantic motion. Slamming car doors. Bumping into motel furniture in the dark. I probably did it and forgot. I'm tired. My mind isn't working right. It's nothing. Just a bruise. I rub it. It feels tender. Normal. I pull on a clean shirt and forget about it. The next morning, I wake up before the sun. The habit is carved into me now. Get up. Get out. Don't let them find you where you slept. I pack my single bag in the dark gray light, filtering through the cheap curtains. I pause, pulling on my jacket. The ache in my arm is gone. But something else is there. A feeling. Like a spot of ice on my skin. I push up my sleeve, I freeze. It's not a bruise anymore. The small, faint mark has spread. It's the size of my palm now. And the color is wrong. It's not blue or purple or a sickly yellow-green. It is black, a flat, solid, ink-stained black, like a hole in my skin. It doesn't look like a part of me. It looks like something spilled on me, something that's soaked right through to the bone. My heart starts a low, heavy drumming. I touch it. Ice. It's not just a feeling. The patch of skin is cold. Not just cool to the touch, it's the deep, unnatural cold of a morgue slab. The skin around it is warm, flushed with my own living heat. But this black patch is dead. What the hell? The whisper is loud in the quiet room. I stumble into the bathroom. The single bulb above the mirror flickers, casting my face in a sick, pulsing light. I hold my arm up. The blackness is stark against my skin. It's not a stain. It doesn't have the texture of a stain. It's my skin. Just black. Panic claws its way up my throat. This is not normal. This is not a bruise. They did this. That phone call. That thing in the mirror. It touched me. It marked me. My breath comes in short, sharp gasps. I have to get it off. I have to get it off me right now. I turn on the tap, shove my arm under the stream of cold water. I grab the small, hard bar of soap from the dish. I start scrubbing. I rub the soap over the black patch, my knuckles white. Nothing. The soap just slides over the cold skin. I scrub harder. My nails dig into the mark. I scrape and scrape. My movements frantic. The skin around the patch turns red. It burns from the friction. But the blackness doesn't change. It doesn't fade. It doesn't even smudge. It's like trying to scrub off a shadow. It's part of me. It's under the surface. I can feel it. A deep, silent cold that seems to go all the way down. I stop, my chest heaving. I'm leaning over the sink. Water and soap suds dripping from my arm. The red, raw skin around the black splotch makes it look even darker, more alien. I look at my reflection. My eyes are wide. Wild. The man in the mirror is terrified. This time, he's moving with me. This time, it's me. I need it out. The thought is not rational. It is pure instinct. A primal scream from the deepest part of my brain. This thing is not me. Get it out. My eyes dart around the small, dirty bathroom. They land on my toiletry bag. On the cheap, disposable razor I bought at the last gas station. Blue plastic. A single blade. My hand shakes as I reach for it. My mind is screaming, don't do it. Go to a hospital. See a doctor. What are you doing? But what would I tell a doctor? That a ghost whispered to me through the phone, and now a piece of my arm is turning into a void? They'd call security. They'd put me in a soft room. They can't help me. No one can help me. I am on my own. I have to do this myself. I hold the razor in my right hand. My left arm is a dead weight, held out in front of me. The black patch is a target. I take a breath. It shudders on the way in. My hand is slick with sweat. I position the corner of the blade over the very edge of the blackness. Just a small cut. I just need to see. I need to know what this is. I press down. The blade slides through the skin with no resistance. It's like cutting through cold butter. And there is no pain. None. My nerves feel dead there. I should be screaming. My arm should be telling my brain that it's been cut. But there is nothing. Just the slight, dragging sensation of the blade moving through flesh. I pull the razor away. A thin, red line should appear. Blood should well up. That's what happens when you cut yourself. That's how bodies work. My body doesn't work that way anymore. From the thin 1-inch cut, there is no blood. Not a single drop of red. Instead, a thick black fluid begins to ooze out. It's not liquid. It's too slow. Too heavy. It's the consistency of oil. Or tar. It pushes its way out of the cut, a single glistening black bead. It doesn't drip. It just sits there, on the surface of my skin, shiny and black under the flickering bathroom light. It smells of ozone and cold earth, like the air after a lightning strike. I stare, my mind shutting down. I can't process what I'm seeing. This is impossible. This can't be real. Then it happens. The bead of black liquid shudders. It stops oozing out. And it starts to retract. With a slow, horrifying certainty, the black fluid is pulled back inside me. It sinks back into the cut it came from, like a tape being rewound. The wound closes behind it. The edges of the skin pull together, knitting themselves shut without a seam. In a matter of seconds, the cut is gone. There is no scar, no line, nothing. It is as if the razor had never touched me, as if I had just disturbed something, as if I had poked a living creature, and it had simply pulled back into its shell, a shell made of my own body. A sound escapes my throat, a choked, strangled gasp. I stumble backward, away from the sink, away from the mirror. My back hits the cold tile of the shower wall, and I slide down to the floor. I sit there, on the dirty linoleum, cradling my arm. My whole body is shaking now. Not from fear. This is something else. This is a level of horror my mind doesn't have a word for. The trap wasn't the apartment. The enemy isn't just following me. It's inside me. It's on me. It is me. I don't know how long I sit there. Time has stopped. The world is just the rattling air conditioner and the frantic thumping of my own heart. Finally, slowly, I force myself to look down at my arm again. I have to see. The blackness is still there. But it's changed. The formless, spreading splotch is gone. I watch, my breath caught in my chest, as the blackness shifts under my skin. It contracts. It pulls into itself. Lines form. Curves appear. It's like watching ink snake across a page, drawing a picture from the inside out. It is arranging itself. It has a purpose. In the space of a minute, it settles. It stops moving. It's not a bruise. It's not a stain. It's a shape. Perfectly formed. Clean. Unmistakable. Burnt into my flesh, as black as a starless midnight. It's a musical note. I have to get out. The thought is a physical command, a jolt that gets my limbs moving. The bathroom is a coffin. The motel room is a tomb. I am my own walking grave. I snatch my bag, my keys. I don't check out. I just leave the key on the nightstand, a ghost offering to a room that tried to swallow me whole. The car engine turns over. A small, familiar rumble in a world that has become alien. I drive. I don't have a destination. There is no map that shows a way out of your own skin. The sun is up now, a pale, watery yellow. It makes the world look washed out. Sickly. I keep one hand on the wheel, the other pressing down on my left arm, on the sleeve covering the mark. As if the pressure could keep it from spreading. As if it mattered. The thing isn't just on me, it's in me. The black ooze proved that. The musical note it formed is just the brand. Proof of ownership. After an hour, or maybe 3, the hunger hits. It's a dull, stupid, human need. My stomach growls. It's almost insulting. How can my body demand food when it's been compromised, hijacked? But the feeling persists. Maybe that's the way back. Do human things. Eat, drink, pretend. I pull off the highway at a sign that promises EAT in big red letters. A diner. A classic, silver-sided box sitting alone by the road. Perfect. A place full of people who are not me. A place that smells like coffee and fried bacon, not ozone and cold dirt. I slide into a red vinyl booth. The seat is cracked. The table is sticky. It's real. I can ground myself here. A waitress with a tired face and a pencil behind her ear slops a mug of coffee down in front of me. I order pancakes. A normal breakfast. I keep my left arm off the table. I curl it in my lap. I can feel the cold spot through my shirt. A constant reminder. There's a small TV bolted to the wall in the corner. It's playing some morning music video show. A woman with bright pink hair is dancing in a field of plastic flowers. The music is thin and tinny. I watch it, I focus on it. It's stupid and meaningless, and that's what I need. Colors, noise, life. I look at the singer's smiling face. For a second, her smile widens too far. It stretches. Then the screen flickers. Just once. A roll of static. When the picture comes back, the pink-haired singer is still there, but her eyes are gone. In their place are 2 pits. Black. Solid. The same ink-stained black that is on my arm. She keeps dancing. The soulless sockets are locked right on me. The music doesn't change. The plastic flowers are still bright, but the thing on the screen is a horror, a puppet with its strings cut, still twitching. My coffee mug clatters against the saucer. A man in the next booth looks over, annoyed. He glances at the TV, then back at his paper. He saw nothing. The waitress is talking to the cook. She didn't see it. I stare at the screen. The image holds for a beat. 2, 3, then another flicker of static. And she's back. Pink hair, smiling eyes, dancing. As if nothing happened. My breath is gone. I look down at my lap, at the arm I have hidden there. It's you, isn't it? You're doing this. The waitress brings my pancakes. You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost. I force a smile. It feels like cracking plaster. Just tired. Long drive. She nods, unconvinced, and moves away. I have to get out of here. I fumble with my wallet, pulling out a $10 bill. I throw it on the table. No time to eat. No time for anything. I just need to go. I stand up and walk towards the door. I pass a family in a booth. The kid's tablet is on the table, playing a cartoon. As I get close, the screen on the tablet flashes, the bright colors dissolving into a mess of gray static. The kid starts to cry. Hey, what's wrong with this thing? The father mutters, slapping the back of the device. I don't look back. I push the glass door open. The little bell above it rings. It sounds like a warning. Out on the street, the sun feels weak. The air feels thin. I'm a disease. I'm a walking distortion field. I start walking faster, heading for my car in the lot. A street light I pass buzzes loudly, then flickers off. The light dies in its glass cage. I keep walking. A parked car's alarm suddenly blares to life, a high, panicked scream in the morning air. People on the sidewalk turn to look. They look at the car. Then they look at me, the guy who just walked past it. I break into a jog. My heart is a frantic drum against my ribs. My car is just 50 feet away. A woman sitting on a bench is talking on her phone. As I pass her, the call dissolves into a harsh shriek of digital noise. She pulls the phone away from her ear, wincing. What the hell? It's me. It's all me. The thing inside is leaking out. It's poisoning the world around me. A magnetic field of wrongness. There is nowhere to run. I am the thing I'm running from. I need to get off the street. To hide. My car feels too far away, too exposed. I see a small town square up ahead. Trees, benches, a coffee shop on the corner. I can go in there. Just for a minute. Catch my breath. Think. What can I do? What in God's name can I do? Char away. I duck into the coffee shop. The air smells like roasted beans and cinnamon. It's quiet. A few people are scattered at tables, typing on laptops, reading. It feels safe. It feels normal. For a second, I can almost breathe. I stand by the door, trying to get my heart rate under control. My eyes scan the room. In the corner, a young mother is with her little girl. The girl is maybe 4 years old, coloring in a book. The mother sips her latte, smiling. A small, perfect pocket of peace. I watch them, a lump forming in my throat. A life I can't have. A world I no longer belong to. The little girl looks up. Her eyes meet mine across the room. She was coloring a picture of a yellow sun. She stops. The crayon is still in her hand. She just stares at me. Her small, happy face goes blank. Then her mouth opens. She doesn't cry. She screams. A raw, piercing shriek of pure terror. She points a trembling finger right at me. Every head in the coffee shop snaps in my direction. The mother's head whips around. Her first look is anger. Protective fury. What did you do? She mouths at me, her face a mask of rage as she swoops in to comfort her screaming child. She pulls the girl into her arms, whispering, "It's okay, sweetie, it's okay. There's nothing to be scared of." She looks up at me again, ready to unload a torrent of abuse. Her eyes lock with mine, and the anger vanishes. Her face goes slack. Her grip on her daughter loosens. Her eyes, which were a warm brown a second ago, lose their color. They lose their depth, They become flat, polished, black. For a single eternal second, I am not looking at a terrified mother. I am looking at the thing. It is staring out at me from behind her eyes. It is using her face as a mask. There is no recognition in those eyes. There is no emotion, just a cold, possessive certainty. A look that says, I see you. You are mine. I stumble backward, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle my own scream. My back hits the door, and I push it open. Falling out onto the sidewalk, I scramble to my feet and run. I don't know where I'm going. Away. Just away. My lungs burn. My leg muscles ache. I'm a sprinting plague. I run past shops, past people who turn and stare. I am a blur of panic. Up ahead, on the corner, is an electronics store. The front window is a gigantic display, a grid of 24 television screens, all different sizes, all tuned to different channels. A chaotic wall of light and color. News anchors, football games, soap operas, commercials for cars I can't afford. As I get closer, a flicker runs through them, one by one, then all at once they snap to black. The entire wall of screens goes dark, a void on the street corner. The sudden silence is deafening. I stop running. I can't help it. I stand there, panting, in the middle of the sidewalk, staring at the black glass. Then, in perfect, silent unison, all 24 screens flicker back to life. They are all showing the same thing. They are all showing me. But it's not a reflection. It's not from a security camera. It's a movie, shot from a dozen impossible angles at once. A high-angle shot, looking down on the crown of my head. A low-angle shot, making me look like a terrified giant. A smooth, tracking shot from the side as I ran down the street a moment ago. A tight close-up on my face, my eyes wide, my mouth open in a silent scream. All of them, playing at the same time. A symphony of my own terror. The man on the screens is running for his life. The man on the sidewalk is frozen. Trapped. A performer in a show he didn't know he was in, watching his own damnation on a wall of stolen light. The man on the screens breaks. He turns and runs. 100 million pixels capture the clumsy, panicked motion of a rat in a maze of light. The man on the sidewalk does the same. We are one. We are running. The sounds of the street are a distant, muffled roar. Car horns. People shouting. All of it is background noise. White noise. The only thing that matters is the pounding in my chest, the burn in my lungs. My feet slap against the pavement, a desperate rhythm. Away. 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 But where? Where do you go when the monster is everywhere? When it can wear the faces of strangers and speak through the city's electronic nervous system? My mind is a blank wall of static, just like the screens in the diner, the kid's tablet. The fear has burned away thought. All that's left is instinct. Run. Hide. Then, a new thought cuts through the noise. It's not mine. It's too calm. Too clear. There is no running from me. The voice isn't in my ears. It's inside my skull. A cold, flat statement of fact. You carry me. You are the door. My stride falters. I stumble, catching myself on a newspaper box. My breath comes in ragged gasps. The voice is right. I look at my hands. I look at the people on the street, giving me a wide berth, their faces a mix of confusion and fear. I'm the ghost at the feast. I am the walking distortion field. The plague. The running stops. A new feeling takes its place. Not hope, not courage. Just a cold, hard certainty. A piece of jagged metal in my gut. If I'm the door, I can be the one to close it. The plan forms instantly. Fully complete. A terrible, perfect solution. It started in one place. It has to end there. My car is where I left it, back near the diner. The walk back is a dead man's march. I don't look at people. I don't look at screens. I keep my eyes on the pavement. I am a machine with a single purpose. Get in the car, buy the gasoline, go home. The drive back to the city is a time-lapse of hell. Street lights seem to bend away from my car. The radio is silent, no matter how many times I jab the buttons. The digital clock on the dashboard is frozen at 3:33 a.m. The sun is high in the sky, But in my car, it is forever the witching hour. I stop at a gas station. I don't fill up the car. I fill a red plastic can. The fumes are thick, acrid, a promise. The kid behind the counter doesn't meet my eyes. He just takes my cash and shoves the change into my hand, his fingers recoiling from the touch of my skin. He knows. On some level, everyone knows. I drive to the apartment building. My building. It looks the same, but it feels like a different universe. A place I used to know. A life that belonged to someone else. I park the car. I take the gas can. I don't bother with the main entrance. I take the service stairs. 2 steps at a time. The concrete walls echo my footsteps. Up, up, up. To the 15th floor. The hallway is quiet. The air is stale, thick with the old ghost of smoke. And there it is. Apartment 1501. My door. Or what's left of it. The wood is a canvas of black char peeling away in scorched flakes. A wide strip of yellow police tape is stretched across the frame. Crime scene. Do not cross. I stand there, just looking at it. The can of gasoline feels heavy in my hand. My heart is a slow, heavy drum. This is it, the end of the line. And then I hear it. It's not coming from a speaker. It's not coming from the hallway. It's inside my head. A single, frail violin note. It hangs in the silence of my mind, shivering like a fragile thread of glass. It's the song from the record, but it's not the distorted, predatory version. It's clean, pure, sad, a melody of loss. It's a welcome. It's a lure. Come in, it seems to say. I've been waiting. My hand reaches out. My fingers touch the police tape. It feels brittle. I don't hesitate. I rip it down. The sound of tearing plastic is loud in the silence. Trespassing. I'm trespassing in the ruins of my own life. I put my shoulder to the charred door. It groans, resists, then gives way with a splintering crack. I step inside. The smell hits me first. Smoke, chemicals, melted plastic, the smell of disaster. The living room is a black hole. The sofa is a skeletal frame of springs and ash. The walls are coated in a layer of greasy soot. Shards of glass from the shattered window crunch under my boots. Everything is destroyed. Everything is gone. Almost everything. In the center of the room, where the record player used to sit, there is a perfect circle of clean floor. The wood is untouched by soot, or ash, or fire hose water. It's just clean. A stage waiting for a performer, a wound that refused to scar over. My eyes are fixed on it. That's the spot. That's the heart of it. A sudden, sharp pain makes me gasp. My left arm. The mark. It's not just a cold spot anymore. It's a spike of ice being driven into my bone. The black lines seem to writhe under my skin, pulsing with a life of their own. The cold spreads, a deep, cellular chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. It's the cold of the thing inside me, recognizing its home turf, stretching its limbs. The violin in my head swells, louder now, more insistent. I know what I have to do. Anew. She tried to burn it out. She just didn't use enough fire. I walk to the center of the room, to the clean circle on the floor. I place the gas can down. The plastic makes a dull thud on the wood. I start to unscrew the cap. My fingers are clumsy, shaking. No, the word explodes in my skull. It's not a whisper anymore. It's a roar, a physical force that makes me stagger. It's the entity. Awake. Alert. And it knows what I'm about to do. This body is mine. My hand freezes on the cap. I try to force it, to make it turn, but my muscles won't obey. My own arm is fighting me. I grunt with effort, sweat beading on my forehead. It's a war for control of my own nervous system. We are eternal. You are just a vessel. I look around the ruined room, my eyes darting. My gaze lands on a piece of the shattered living room mirror, lying angled against the wall. And I see myself. My reflection stares back at me. But the eyes, they aren't my eyes. They are 2 pits of solid black, polished oil. The same soulless voids I saw on the TV singer, on the mother in the coffee shop. There is no fear in them, no humanity, just a cold, absolute possession. I'm looking at the thing, and it's wearing my face. It's watching me fight it from inside my own head. Seeing it, seeing that monstrous, empty gaze in my own reflection, it breaks something. A surge of pure, white-hot rage boils up from my gut. Rage at being used, at being turned into a puppet. A walking horror show. "Get out," I whisper, my voice a raw croak. The reflection smiles. It's my mouth, but it's not my smile. It's wide and wrong. I roar, a sound torn from my very soul, and pour all of my will, all of my remaining self, into my right hand. The ligaments in my wrist scream as I force the cap. It gives with a sharp crack. I lift the can. The voice in my head is a hurricane of fury now, screaming threats, promises, commands. I ignore it. It's just noise. I tip the can. The gasoline glugs out, splashing onto the clean wood floor, soaking into the charred carpet, spattering on my own jeans. The chemical smell is overwhelming, erasing the scent of smoke. It's the smell of a clean slate. I toss the empty can aside. It clatters somewhere in the darkness. My hand dives into my pocket, fumbling for the lighter, a cheap, plastic thing. I will unmake you. I will scatter your soul to the dust. My thumb finds the metal wheel. The entity's final, desperate push for control is immense. My whole body locks up, rigid as a board. My jaw is clenched so tight my teeth ache. I can feel it trying to pry my thumb off the lighter, to force my hand open. Just one spark. That's all I need. One last act of defiance. Through the black-eyed mask in the mirror, I force my own lips to move. I give it my own smile. Not a smile of rage, a smile of release. With the last atom of will I possess, I flick my thumb. The flint scrapes. A single, defiant spark leaps into the gasoline-soaked air. The world ignites. A sudden, violent WHOOMF sucks the air from my lungs. The fire doesn't crawl, it explodes. A wall of orange and blue heat slams into me. I see the flames race across the floor, consume the walls, climb toward the ceiling in an instant. There is no pain. I stand in the heart of the inferno, a man-shaped torch. The fire eats my clothes, my skin, my flesh. But there is no scream. The rage is gone. The fear is gone. All that's left is a strange, profound calm. The thing inside me shrieks. A silent, psychic death cry that is not my own. And as my body is erased by the flames, a new sound fills the roaring chaos. The violin. It's clear now. Perfect. Not a recording, not a memory, but a living presence. It soars above the sound of the fire, a single, piercingly beautiful melody of freedom. It's the song, finally whole, finally clean. It plays its final triumphant notes, hanging in the air for a single, perfect moment. Then it too fades, and there is only the sound of the fire, cleansing everything, until there is nothing left but silence.